Chapter 175. Xiao Xian lifted a large stone and quickly walked from the river bank to the door of Yan Shua's house. He kicked some wooden blocks to the side and threw the stone on the ground. Bang! Even those who stood further away felt the ground shake, not to mention Yan Shua's family. The close shaking caused another part of the wooden house, which was not very sturdy to begin with, to collapse. He had overdone it. Xiao Xian picked his nose and smiled apologetically at Yan Shua's family. "Cough about that, I'll help you fix the house later," Xiao Xian said. When he was in the tribe, building a big house did not take much time. He followed the people of the Pu tribe and squeezed into a small place only because he thought it was troublesome. He would only stay for 2 or 3 days, so building a house was unnecessary. Moreover, he was unfamiliar with the place, so it was safer and less worrisome to stay in a place arranged for him. However, now that he met people from the same tribe, it was a different story. Yan Shua's family was not angry at all. Instead, their eyes were shining as they looked at Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian was strong, so was the tribe. The stronger the tribe, the more stable they could stand in this world and survive for a long time. No wonder their ancestors repeatedly told their children and grandchildren to remember their tribe and wait for the day they returned. Now it seemed that all their efforts were worth it. After Xiao Xian threw the stone here, he jumped up and sat down. He waited for Yan Shua's family to calm down a little before he discussed matters with Yan Shua. As for moving the large stone in front of everyone, it was only a deterrent. Perhaps it was not much in other places, but here it was still useful. Looking at the happy atmosphere, Li wanted to reduce his presence as much as possible. He wanted to run as far away as possible. Xiao Xian's series of actions had already made him tremble with fear. Looking at the snake slave who was still kneeling there in pain and the broken snake head at his feet, Li took a deep breath and turned to run. However, just as he turned and took a step, a wooden stick broke through the wind and pierced through his chest. The 2 ends of the wood weren't sharpened, but it still forcefully pierced through Ruthless' chest. Before Ruthless could even sense it, he had already been hit. Kneeling on the ground, Li tried his best to keep his eyelids open, wanting to see who threw the wooden stick at him. But all he saw was a ball of golden light slowly approaching from afar. The so-called golden light was naturally not some special luminous object, but the slave owner wearing the golden fur. Yesterday, Xiao Xian saw that the slave owner was still wearing a black spotted animal skin. Today, he had changed it again. The golden fur reflected the light of the sun, making the slave owner look quite eye-catching. It seemed that this slave owner liked to use this method to show his nobility. As a slave owner with a lot of slaves and financial resources, there was no shortage of animal skins. Xiao Xian learned some information about this slave owner from the other members of the Pu tribe. The slave owner's name was Shu. He had only been here for a few years. Sometimes he would stay here for a while before leaving. Sometimes he would disappear for a long time. He had a lot of people under him, so he didn't need to personally manage them. It was said that the leader of the Pu tribe's traveling team had a good relationship with Shu, so he could get some preferential treatment here. But Xiao Xian felt that when Fan Ning was facing Shu, he was not so natural and even cautious. Shu was a very dangerous person. The cruelty of a slave owner was something that everyone understood. The smile on the surface was not necessarily true, there could be a knife hidden in the smile. When Shu, who was wearing a dazzling golden outfit, slowly walked over, there was still a smile on his face. It was as if the stick that killed Ruthless was not kicked by him. Beside this slave owner, there were 2 other people who were also his slaves. However, those 2 people had a relatively high status among the slaves owned by Shu. They were not comparable to the snake slave that Li Yi brought. While everyone was looking at Shu, who was wearing a dazzling golden outfit, Xiao Xian raised his eyes to the sky. Just now, that slave owner had kicked out more than 1 stick. In the sky, a long shadow quickly fell from a high place. Puff! The person who had been beaten by Xiao Xian to kneel there, unable to get up, had his throat pierced from behind. He looked at his own blood flowing down the wooden stick, as if he wanted to say something, but his throat could not make any other sound. The chain-like lines that originally appeared on his neck began to disappear from the wound. He raised his arm, wanting to grab the person who walked past him, but found that the distance of less than 5 steps was like a natural moat that could not be touched. He could only watch as that golden ball slowly passed by him. When all the chain-like lines disappeared, the person who often came to the wanderer area to be arrogant, powerlessly dropped his hand, no longer breathing. The people around only felt a chill go straight to their heads, and their fear of the slave owner deepened. Xiao Xian looked at the slave owner who was walking straight towards him. He was wearing clothes made of linen, much better than the coarse linen that the Pu tribe had. And on Shi Shu's waist, there was also a very fine polished stone axe hanging from a leather rope. The stone axe was not big, the body was flat, the blade was wide, the curve of the arc was a little big, and the 2 corners were slightly upturned. There were also some patterns on the body, and it could be seen that those patterns were very carefully carved. And this kind of carefully crafted stone axe was definitely not used for cutting trees. This kind of autocratic primitive weapon looked like a kind of accessory that hung on the body. In addition, Xiao Xian also felt the movement of the power of inheritance from Shi Shu. The slave owner was like the combination of the chief and the shaman in the tribe. He had absolute leadership and some abilities similar to the shaman. It was just that the slaves under him were not as lucky as the warriors in the tribe. Shi Shu looked at Cha-Cha next to him, then turned back to Xiao Xian and said, "Sorry, the slaves below are not obedient." Obviously, the slave owner had understood the whole story, but he did not attack Xiao Xian as other people thought, nor did he apologize as he said. Instead, he watched Cha-Cha eat the snake with great interest. After watching for a while, the slave owner dressed in glittering gold left with his people, as if he had come just to execute the 2 disobedient slaves. But Xiao Xian guessed that the slave owner's goal was not so. Just now, Shi Shu's eyes stayed on Cha-Cha's feet for a while. Shi Shu's focus should be on the Yanjiao tribe. Could it be that he knew about the Yanjiao tribe? Many slave owners would often travel around the mainland, so maybe he really did know. But, looking at Shi Shu's appearance, he did not intend to say more. Shi Shu left, and the people around him also took away the 2 slaves who were killed. Only the 2 pools of blood on the ground told everyone what had happened here. After leaving the wanderer's area, one of the people who followed Shi Shu asked for the vacant position. "If you killed them, you killed them. Just promote another one," Shi Shu said indifferently. The person next to him respectfully bowed and responded. Shi Shu's answer was as he expected. Maybe the slave owner did not even know the names of the 2 slaves. The ranks of slaves were divided into Li, Fu, Tai, and so on. The slaves below Tai were all inferior slaves. The snake slave was only responsible for raising snakes for the master and got more power, but his rank was still a bit lower than Tai, so it was not worth the slave owner to remember his name. The slave owner naturally did not care about the life and death of the inferior people. After Shi Shu left, Xiao Xian chatted with Yan Shuo. Next, Xiao Xian would definitely go to the central region to inquire about some information. With Yan Shuo's current ability, it was too dangerous to go to the central region. Plus, he still had his wife and children, so Xiao Xian could not bring them all. He did not understand the situation in the central region. He only knew that many people there were very strong. Before the situation was clear, it was not convenient to bring these people. Yan Shuo also knew that it was not good for his family to go to the central region, so he wanted to stay. When Xiao Xian came back from the central region, he would follow. Xiao Xian originally intended to let Yan Shuo live in another place. The slave owner was not easy to get along with. Yan Shuo refused. No need. If the slave owner really wanted to kill people, he would not wait. Just like Li and the others, he would do it on the spot. Since he did not do anything to us, he will not do anything in a short time. Yan Shuo still had some understanding of the slave owner. Moreover, I am more familiar with this place. I also know what kind of people are around here. If we change places, it may not be the same. Yan Shuo said. Xiao Xian thought about it and agreed. He only knew people from the drumming tribe and the Pu tribe here. The Pu tribe would not let people from other tribes stay in their tribe for a long time, and the drumming tribe was too far away. No one would go there. Yan Shuo's family could not go there by themselves. It was too dangerous. After thinking about it, Yan Shuo's idea was more practical. Then you can stay here for the time being. I will help you build a house. With Xiao Xian's help, the new wooden house could be built quickly. The person who came to find Yan Shuo last night was in a daze because of his injuries. He woke up very late today. When he woke up, he heard others talking about Yan Shuo and hurried over. As a comrade who had fought together, Yan Shuo also wanted to help him. Before the other party went to find the slave owner, he would let him stay with them. The new house was bigger than the previous one, so it was possible for one more person to live in it. Xiao Xian also felt that it was feasible. With more people, they could take care of each other. When I come back from the central region, I will bring you back to the tribe. Xiao Xian left some water moonstones for Yan Shuo, and also made some stone tools for him. Compared to before, Yan Shuo's strength was a little stronger now. It was absolutely possible for him to make a living, and maybe he could even hunt a lot of prey. On the day the Pu tribe left, Xiao Xian temporarily bid farewell to Yan Shuo's family. He followed the expanded travel team and continued to head to the central region. According to Yan Shuo, he was not sure what happened to the tribe that year, but he knew that there should be many wanderers like him. If he could find these people, Xiao Xian could bring them back to the tribe. Chapter 176. When they set off again, the team had expanded. In addition to the people from the Pu tribe, there were also travel teams from other tribes. After the team expanded, it became more lively. Xiao Xian could also hear a lot of gossip from other tribes. When he was resting, he would also ask people about some things. After a few days, Xiao Xian learned a lot of new information. Xiao Xian had a map in his hands. He had drawn it himself. The map left by the ancestors could no longer be used. After nearly 1,000 years, the mountains had become plains, plains had become mountains and rivers. The changes were too great. The composition and distribution of the tribes had also changed greatly. Xiao Xian needed to draw a new map to bring back, so that the tribe would not have difficulty crossing the river. At this moment, an experienced traveler was talking to Xiao Xian, telling him what he had seen in the past. At first, we did not take this road, but took another one. Later, there was a war between the tribes, and it has not subsided yet. We temporarily changed to this one. The river on that route was much wider than this one, and there were 2 colors. There was a tribe beside the river. They were very good at making rafts. The rafts over there were the biggest and sturdiest ones I have ever seen. It would be great if we could also have a wooden raft like that. The man recalled, his eyes filled with envy. Seeing Xiao Xian's puzzled face, the man gestured to Xiao Xian and explained in detail the biggest and sturdiest rafts he had mentioned. After listening to the other person's description, Xiao Xian paused and said, "Is that a boat?" Yes, they call it a boat." The man continued to recall, talking about what he had seen. Only a few years had passed, and many of his memories were vague. Xiao Xian memorized these. If he had time, he wanted to go there and have a look. When the time came, the people of the tribe would need a boat to cross the river. Without metal, how to make a big boat, Xiao Xian was not sure. It would be best if he could learn some technology from there. I remember that there are also many tourists over there. Another traveler was unwilling to be left out and came over to chat. It seems so, but it's just to help resist the tree and chop the wood. Hey, I heard that the slave owner also went there and took away a lot of slaves. The previous person said. In order to increase the number of slaves under their command, the slave owners would always go to some places to get people. Those wanderers who had lost their fire seeds or whose tribes had been destroyed were the favorite targets of the slave owners. However, they would not immediately go to those wanderers after their tribes were destroyed. Instead, they would wait for 1 or 2 years for the wanderers to see the situation clearly. They would only go to those wanderers when they were close to despair after suffering setbacks. At that time, some wanderers who had suffered a lot would not only not avoid the slave owners, but would also take the initiative to stick to them. Just like ruthlessness. In order to get more slaves, the slave owners would move around, and Shu, whom Xiao Xian had met before, was the same. When Xiao Xian listened to the two people, he learned about some of the places Shu had been before. Xiao Xian secretly remembered those places. He suspected that Shu had seen people like Yan Shuo, or had seen the totem patterns of the Yanjiao tribe. He didn't know if it was possible that he had seen it when he was looking for slaves. No matter what, Xiao Xian intended to look for it when they passed by those places. After all, according to the words passed down by Yan Shuo's ancestors, there should be a lot of wanderers scattered everywhere. After all these years, if one generation after another lived, there should be a lot of people. The Yanjiao tribe on the other side of the river did not have a large population. If they wanted to expand, the first thing to do was to call back the scattered Yanjiao tribesmen. In addition to those places, there are a lot of wanderers on the grassland we have to pass through. Slave owners often go there. A traveler said. Xiao Xian looked at the area that was not completely drawn on the map. That was the grassland. The travel team would not go deep, and would only pass by the border of the grassland. There were a lot of tribes on the grassland, and the people there were also very tough. The travel team generally would not go deep. Just as they were talking, Yu suddenly said, "Look in front." Xiao Xian's line of sight left the map and looked at the water in front of them. On the water in front of them, there were some people floating, and each of them had fatal wounds. "Is there a war in front?" someone asked. It seems that the scale is not small. The people around them were talking, and the leaders of several travel teams also gathered together to discuss. Finally, they decided to rest on the shore for the time being. "Let's take a break first. Send some people to scout ahead. If there is a battle between tribes, we will avoid it first, or wait for it to end before we set off," one of the people in front said. The people on the raft paddled. After the raft reached the shore, Xiao Xian and the people around him spontaneously tied the raft to a tree or a big rock on the shore. They also took their own bags with them. No one put anything on the raft, because they did not know when they would have to abandon the raft to escape. After all, this was not their own tribe. Especially in a place where there was a war, it was especially dangerous. It was easy to get caught in the crossfire. Each of the leaders sent a dozen or so people to scout the situation at the front. "Xiao Xian, let's go and see if there are any wild beasts around. We can hunt one and eat it," Yu said. When they were resting, the people in the team could hunt nearby, as long as they did not go too far. If they went too far and the team did not see anyone, they would not wait. "Okay," Xiao Xian said to the people next to him. If the team set off, he would let them greet them. After leaving the tribe, Xiao Xian ate less fearsome beasts. Generally, they only hunted wild beasts, and these people did not go to places where there were fearsome beasts. He kind of missed fearsome beast meat. He did not know where Cha-Cha had gone to hunt. That guy had high requirements for food and did not like ordinary wild beasts. However, Cha-Cha had never been left behind. Even if it left temporarily, it could quickly catch up with the team. Xiao Xian was not worried about it. "Look, there's a deer over there." You pointed in a direction and said excitedly. Then he quickly took out his hair dryer and used the poisonous thorn as an arrow. He put it in and carefully approached the deer. He had to hurry. Otherwise, if the other members of the travel team got there first, there would be no food. You quietly approached the deer, and Xiao Xian followed. However, Xiao Xian felt that there was something wrong with the surroundings. It was not necessarily a crisis, but something seemed to have happened. He was more careful when he sneaked around. When he was about the same distance away from the deer, you pointed the end of the blowpipe towards the deer and put the other end into his mouth. While he was blowing, his cheeks puffed up. Whoosh! The speed of the arrow was very fast, and the arrow that was blown out accurately hit the deer. The poison in the arrow needles was not a lethal poison, but a very powerful paralyzing poison. When a deer was shot, the arrow needles would pierce through the deer's skin, and the poison would spread. After the deer felt that it was being attacked, it wanted to run away quickly. However, after taking 2 steps, it staggered and fell to the ground after a few steps. Hey! It's done! You was very excited. He was about to go and collect the prey, but he was stopped by Xiao Xian. What's wrong? You looked at Xiao Xian in confusion. Xiao Xian did not answer. Instead, he raised his chin in a direction. You looked over. In the woods not far from the deer, some birds flew up. They were probably alarmed by the deer's running and falling. What's wrong with those birds? You still did not understand. He thought about it and said helplessly, You don't want to eat those birds, do you? Although those birds are not too small, they are not easy to catch. Why would we eat those birds when we have a deer? Xiao Xian looked at you in silence for a few seconds and said, Those are scavenger birds. Scavenger birds? They eat corpses. Xiao Xian pointed over there. There are quite a few of them. Because of the deer's movement, some birds were startled, but Xiao Xian believed that it was only a small part of them. There were many that did not fly at all. The birds that flew up just now quickly flew back down. If there was no food to attract them, why would they stay on the ground? Yu's face turned serious, and he put away the hair dryer. He did not care about the deer. Compared to his life, food could be put aside first. Because of the direction of the wind, when they came over, they did not smell anything strange. In addition, there were many flowers blooming near the river bank. The fragrance of the flowers interfered with the sense of smell, so they did not notice it at first. Let's go and take a look, you said. Before Xiao Xian could answer, you had already taken out his stone knife and went over. Xiao Xian looked around and did not see anyone else for the time being, so he also followed. They were getting closer and closer. Because of the dense trees, they could not see the situation there. However, as they got closer, Xiao Xian could already smell the unpleasant smell. In addition, there were also the sounds of the scavenger birds pecking at food. Probably because there were too many of them fighting with each other. Carefully pushing aside the branches in front of them, Xiao Xian saw the source of the smell. Dead people, a lot of dead people. Compared to those floating on the river, there were more here. Moreover, because there was no river water to wash them, there was a layer of red blood on the ground. Their clothes were similar to those on the river, so they should be from the same tribe. Looking at the situation, it was obvious that they had been slaughtered. These people. Yu was about to say something when he suddenly found that there was an arm moving in the pile of dead people. There's still someone alive? Hearing Yu's voice, the person who was pressed down struggled and pushed the person on top away, revealing a face full of blood. There was only one wound on his body, but it was almost fatal. Most of the others had fatal wounds on their bodies. The birds that were pecking on the ground flew up when they sensed the presence of the living people, but some gluttonous birds stayed on the ground. Help, help me! The man did not care about the birds pecking around him, and crawled towards Yu and Xiao Xian. Yu frowned and took a step back. He did not know these people, and he did not want to get involved in the struggle between tribes. He was just a traveler, not looking for trouble. Let's leave. Before you could finish, there was a whoosh. Poochie! The man who was crawling towards them was pierced by a spear and nailed to the ground. Xiao Xian raised his head and looked in one direction. There was a person standing on a tree. A man wearing a mask. Chapter 177. The man standing on the branch was wearing animal skin without fur. It was a skin that had been treated more carefully. The stripes on the animal skin looked very similar to the forest. Dark green and light green intertwined. If he hid his breath in the forest, it would be very difficult to be discovered. This kind of clothing was not a special case. When the temperature was a little warmer, Xiao Xian had seen many people wearing this kind of animal skin. The most special thing about the man on the branch was the mask on his face. At first glance, it looked like they were wearing masks with patterns on them. However, in reality, the masks were part of their facial bones. As for the patterns on the masks, they were totem patterns that appeared due to their totem power. An invisible murderous aura spread. The surrounding birds that were pecking at the carrion also rushed to flap their wings and leave. There were many birds gathered in the pile of corpses. When these birds flew up at the same time, it was like opening a black curtain. The figure on the other side was also faintly discernible. Yu swallowed his saliva and clenched his stone knife. The tip of the knife unconsciously pointed in that direction, guarding against the person who appeared. When did the person appear? He did not notice at all. At the same time, a human figure jumped down from a high place and split open the black curtain formed by the scavenger birds with lightning speed. He went straight for Qi and slashed down with his saber. There was no superfluous movement. It was just one knife. But this knife made you feel as if there were tens of thousands of knives chopping down on his head. The power from this knife came in an instant. It seemed that no matter where he hid, this stone knife would chase after him. Yu's expression froze. His body seemed to be in a quagmire. He wanted to struggle, but his body did not listen to him. He struggled and wanted to escape, but it was already impossible. At this moment, Yu regretted. He was very regretful. Why did he come here? Couldn't he just leave with the deer? Before leaving the tribe, what did his grandfather say? Don't be too curious. If you find something strange, you should leave far away. Yu smelled the clearest scent of death in his life. Perhaps in the next moment, he would be like those people in the pile of corpses. He would be chopped in half and thrown here to become food for the scavenger birds hovering in the sky. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his shoulder and quickly dragged him back. A very sharp stone knife appeared above his head and blocked the knife that was coming down on his head. The two sides collided without any fancy move. At the place where they collided, fine fragments of the stone knife flew everywhere. Under the saber Qi from both sides, Qi's heart pounded wildly. He felt as if he had just survived a calamity. However, he also knew that now was not the time to think about it. If it were not for Xiao Xian, he would have ended up like those people in the pile of corpses. Standing here, he could not help, so he quickly moved back a few steps to make more space for Xiao Xian. Although the other side's momentum was very strong, Yu was stunned by this sudden momentum and could not react immediately. However, Xiao Xian was a hunter who often fought with those ferocious beasts in the forest. He had also faced ferocious beasts that were good at hiding and attacking. Naturally, he could cope with it. He held the handle of the stone knife with one hand, and after the other hand got rid of Yu, he used his palm to support the back of the knife. Holding the knife with both hands, he blocked the opponent's sudden attack. If it was an ordinary stone knife, it would probably be broken in an instant. However, the knife in Xiao Xian's hand was given to him by the shaman. It was also one of the stone tools that he brought back from the King Stoneworm's territory when he found his ancestors. Before he left the tribe, the shaman asked someone to polish it and give it to Xiao Xian. When he left the tribe, among the knives he took, except for the teeth knife that old Ku had polished again, this was the only one he took. The teeth knife had been damaged and polished several times, so it had shrunk a lot. However, this stone knife was a little bigger. When he fought with others, Xiao Xian always used this knife. The moment he blocked the knife, Xiao Xian felt a strong saber chi pass through the stone knife and hit his arms. However, Xiao Xian was not afraid. With the totemic pattern on his arms, he pushed the opponent away. The man who was pushed away quickly retreated until he reached the tree where he had been standing. He stared at Xiao Xian, his eyes showing confusion and surprise under the mask. When you was thinking about whether to take out the stinger from the animal skin bag, the masked man quickly left and did not attack them again. After carefully sensing the surroundings, you let out a long sigh of relief. From the opponent's sudden attack to Xiao Xian blocking the opponent, the moment of silence, the two sides separated and the opponent left. All of this happened in the time of a breath. You thought that if he could master how to use the frog poison, he would have the ability to protect himself. Now it seemed that he was still too inexperienced. Many times, when there was absolute power, there was no time for him to use poison. You could still clearly remember that when the knife came down on his head, he had nowhere to run. It was as if all the blood in his body had been frozen. "Scared me to death." You breathed heavily. He did not mind the rotten smell here. Even if it was worse, it was still better than death. "Thank you, Xiao Xian. If not for you, I would be like those people," you said. He did not expect that Xiao Xian would be so powerful. He thought that this person who appeared with the drumming tribe was just an unknown tribesman. He did not expect that although he was younger than him, his strength was stronger than him. No wonder before they left, his grandfather told him to follow Xiao Xian, but not the other Pu tribe people. It seemed that the old man had already seen who was strong and who was weak. Sure enough, in terms of eyesight, he was not as good as the old man at home. "Let's leave quickly." Xiao Xian looked at the scavenger birds flying down and said, Yes, let's leave quickly." You turned and ran. After running a few steps, he turned and ran towards the place where the deer was. The poison on the arrows from the blowpipe was too strong. The deer was still lying there. You did not care about killing the deer. He dragged the deer and left. He just wanted to leave this place filled with the smell of death. No wonder those people in the traveling team would quickly avoid the tribal war. They would really be implicated. When he finally saw the team resting on the shore and met people moving around, you slowed down his pace. At this time, he remembered his doubts and looked at Xiao Xian. "Say, which tribe did that person come from? The other side is very strong." Xiao Xian thought about the other side's mask and said, "Thousand Faces." According to Xiao Xian's knowledge, there was only one tribe like this. It was also the first tribe that Xiao Xian had seen. It was recorded in the animal skin scroll passed down by the ancestors of the Yanjiao tribe, the Thousand Faces tribe. According to the records of the ancestors, after the totem warriors in this tribe awakened, they would form a mask with their own characteristic. That kind of mask was actually the special bone structure of the face when using the totem power, covering the whole face. Everyone in the Thousand Faces tribe wore different masks. Even if they looked the same, there would be some small differences. It was like there were no two identical leaves in the world. In the Thousand Faces tribe, some people's masks were very ferocious, like evil spirit. Some people's masks were very ordinary, or looked very peaceful. Some wore smiles, some wore anger. There were thousands of people and thousands of different masks. This was the Thousand Faces tribe. The totem pattern of the Thousand Faces tribe was a strange mask. Xiao Xian had seen it on the wall of a cave near the mountain foot of the Yanjiao tribe. Behind the wall of the cave, the pattern of a human face mask was the totem symbol of the Thousand Faces tribe. Thousand Faces? Hearing this term, you didn't react for a moment. But after thinking for a while, he recalled some things. His face was full of shock. The Thousand Faces tribe? The Thousand Faces tribe was too far away for the Pu tribe, who had always lived in the border areas. But you had heard many people talk about the Thousand Faces tribe. Although it was just some rumors, and many of them were exaggerated, it was undeniable that the Thousand Faces tribe was a powerful tribe. How did those people who were killed offend the Thousand Faces tribe? I remember that on the map they drew, the Thousand Faces tribe was still a bit far from here. If there wasn't a big matter, they wouldn't come here. You guessed that this tribal war was actually a one-sided massacre. Who knows? Xiao Xian said absent-mindedly. To be remembered by the ancestors of the Yanjiao tribe, and to be drawn on the wall, a tribe had to be at the same level as the Yanjiao tribe. If the difference in strength was too great, the ancestors wouldn't have had such an attitude. Since you said that the Thousand Faces tribe was a powerful tribe here, and had always been very famous, then, was the Yanjiao tribe at the same level as the Thousand Faces tribe in the past? Now Xiao Xian still didn't know. Nearly 1,000 years had passed. Some tribes had died out and new ones had appeared. The prosperous ones had declined and the declining ones had died. There were also tribes that grew from weak to strong, and tribes like the Thousand Faces tribe had always been powerful. It was just that no one remembered the Yanjiao tribe. This was really a sad thing. If the ancestors of the tribe who had passed away knew about this, it was not known whether they would cry and crawl out of the fire pit. Not long after Xiao Xian and you returned to the traveling team, the people who had been sent out by the leaders to inquire about the situation also came back. I heard that the tribe that was slaughtered robbed the fire crystals of the Thousand Faces tribe. They also killed a few children of the Thousand Faces tribe who were alone. They were chased to their nest, and the whole tribe was slaughtered. Even the fire seed was completely extinguished. Tut! How dare they provoke the Thousand Faces tribe? That's right. Aren't they looking for death? When we meet people from big tribes, even if they are children, we don't dare to offend them. Probably those people thought that they could do it secretly, but they didn't expect that it would bring about a disaster. Or maybe they had thought about it, but greed always made them risk their lives. Listening to the discussion around him, Xiao Xian had a different feeling. Many people didn't dare to provoke a powerful tribe, even if they were children with weak fighting abilities. After all, things like today were rare. Most people had the same idea as the travelers. This was the influence of a big tribe. Just by hearing its name and seeing its totem, people were afraid. Chapter 178. Because of the revenge massacre of the Thousand Masks tribe, the travelers discussed for a long time. Even when they set off again, they continued to talk about similar things over the years. This allowed Xiao Xian to obtain some new information. Not to mention, other than the Thousand Masks tribe, there were a few other tribes that were recorded in the animal skin rolls left behind by their ancestors. Xiao Xian marked the animal skin rolls according to the information he obtained, then carefully rolled them up and put them away. These were all to be brought back to the Yanjiao tribe. If the Yanjiao tribe returned, would they be able to regain their former glory? Xiao Xian was looking forward to that day. Xiao Xian and you did not mention to the others that they had encountered the Thousand Masks tribe. After traveling on the river for another 2 days, the traveling group abandoned the wooden raft and changed to walking. This was because it was inconvenient to use wooden rafts to travel further. Although there was also a river, it was not as fast as walking. Later on, they had to go to higher places. The area in front of them was located at a higher elevation. It was said that there were endless grasslands and snowy mountains. It sounded like some places in the hunting area of the Yanjiao tribe. The grasslands were very large, and there were many large and small tribes scattered there. Wars often broke out between the tribes there. The traveler team would not go deep into the grasslands, nor would they get involved in matters related to war. They were just passing through the grasslands and would exchange things with the tribes there. At this time of the year, the grass on the grasslands was green. Walking along the river and stepping onto the grasslands, Xiao Xian looked around. The sky was high and the air was cool. The grass was green, and there were some small flowers that he could not name blooming on the grasslands. They had a faint fragrance. Looking ahead, the green grasslands stretched as far as the eye could see. In addition to the river that crossed the grasslands beside Shaoxian, there were many small lakes scattered across the grasslands. The lake water reflected the blue sky. Among them, there were also some smaller rivers that passed through the large and small lake. The water was clear, and there were some small fish swimming quickly. This is the grasslands. If we go a little further, we will enter the Feng tribe. An experienced traveler next to Shaoxian said. The Feng tribe was one of the tribes on the grassland. The team of travelers happened to pass by the Feng tribe. The Feng tribe was already familiar with the traveling team. They had been on this path for many years, and both sides had long understood each other. For the people of the Feng tribe, the tribes of the travelers were too far away from here. They didn't have the problem of fighting for territory with them. The long distance posed no threat to them. What's more, every time these travelers passed by, they could take out some of their tribe's products to exchange with the travelers. Many people in the tribe liked this kind of trade. They didn't need to leave the tribe to exchange for some rare things. It was simple and convenient. For the travelers, they could exchange things and pass through the grassland under the protection of the Feng tribe. This was a win-win situation. Therefore, they didn't mind taking a step back during the exchange. Where are the people of the Feng tribe? I don't see anything. You looked around and said. They don't live here, but this is their sphere of influence. Sometimes, the Feng tribe will send people here to patrol. If we walk a little further, we should be able to meet the patrol team. The person next to him said. The Feng tribe's territory is so big. You said with emotion. This is big? If you see the real big tribes on the grassland, won't your eyes pop out? The person next to him laughed. Many tribes on the grassland raise some cattle, sheep, horses, and so on. They also hunt, but there aren't many prey here. Most of the time they eat those raised animals. And those raised animals need to eat grass. The grass on the grassland is for those raised animals. If there isn't enough grass, they won't be able to raise many animals. Without raised animals, there would be no source of food. Naturally, the tribe wouldn't have a good life. Listening to the person next to him, you nodded in understanding. Most of the grassland here was not dense forest. There weren't many beasts living here, unlike their Pu tribe. Even if they didn't have the things brought back by the travelers, they could still find food in the surrounding forest. As they were talking, Shaoxian heard a rumbling sound. The ground under his feet also trembled. Someone is coming. Don't worry, it's the Feng tribe's patrol team. By the way, do you know that there are many tribal warriors on the grassland who ride horses? Ride horses? You had only eaten horse meat. He really hadn't ridden before. Shaoxian and the other travelers looked in the direction of the sound. Over there were some large mounds that were covered with green grass. As the rumbling sound got closer and closer, at the place where the mounds met the blue sky, a figure emerged. Soon, more figures appeared in everyone's line of sight. The patrol team had 12 or 20 people patrolling everywhere. Sometimes they moved in large groups. Not all of them were members of the patrol team. Most of them were other members of the tribe. The people of the tribe wouldn't stay in the place all day long. When they were free, they would ride horses and gallop in groups on the grassland. Hundreds and thousands of horses galloped down from the huge green mound towards the group of travelers, bringing with them a majestic aura. When the horses approached the traveling team, they began to slow down. In the midst of neighing and whistling, the horses gradually stopped and surrounded the traveling team. Several team leaders of the traveling team also knew the leader of the group. They greeted him with a warm smile and chatted with him. They also threw him some rare things on the grassland that they had exchanged on the way. The leader of the Feng tribe took the things and said, "Many people in our tribe have been waiting. A few days ago, someone asked when you would come. Today we finally see you." Seeing the traveling team, the people of the Feng tribe were very happy. Some of them shouted that they wanted to go back immediately to prepare the items they wanted to exchange. Others controlled the speed of their horses and followed the traveling team. As they walked back to the tribe, they asked the traveling team what new things they had. A young man even chatted with you. He was very interested in the frog poison that you had brought. He also asked you to teach him how to use those poisonous stingers. Xiao Xian chatted with the leader of the Feng tribe's patrol team about the Cha-Cha. The leader of the patrol team was called Yi Bei. Seeing the eagle in the sky, Yi Bei stopped looking down on Xiao Xian. Yi Bei didn't have the same fear as the Pu tribe's leader, Guang Ho. They didn't reject Cha-Cha, this giant eagle. As long as it didn't attack the beasts raised by the tribe, they were quite happy to let Cha-Cha fly over their tribe. Because every day there were many big birds in the sky that took away the livestock raised by the tribe, and the Feng tribe didn't have their own trained eagles to defend themselves. Usually, they could only make some artificial defenses. Yi Bei didn't expect that there would be a person with a giant eagle in the traveling team. He also became more enthusiastic about Xiao Xian. Seeing Xiao Xian walking together with the people of the Pu tribe, and that they were quite familiar with each other, Yi Bei thought that Xiao Xian was also from the Pu tribe. It was just that he didn't have the painting on his eyes. They weren't very curious about other tribes. They had been here before, and now that they were familiar with each other, there was nothing new. After all, they were just passers-by. In the traveling team, there were also some people from the Pu tribe. After leaving the tribe, they temporarily wiped off the painting on their eyes. In this way, Xiao Xian became less conspicuous. The traveling team followed the people of the Feng tribe to the Feng tribe's encampment. It was already late, and the traveling team couldn't just leave after trading. After walking so far, they took advantage of this opportunity to stay in the Feng tribe for 2 days and rest. After passing through the grasslands, they would enter the central region. At that time, they wouldn't have so much time to rest. The grasslands were beautiful, and they could hear many people singing. There were also some children playing and fishing by the river and lake. Around them, there were adults and children riding horses. It looked peaceful. It was impossible to imagine that this tribe had fought with another tribe not long ago. Not long after, Xiao Xian saw some houses made of animal skin, grass, and wood not far away. Some of them looked like tents. "Tonight we'll rest here. This place is for you to rest." Yi Bei pointed to a row of simple wooden houses and said. Although there were many wooden houses, there were also many people in the team. They had to squeeze in. Xiao Xian, Yu, and the others entered the house together. After tidying up a little, Xiao Xian looked at the other places of the Feng tribe from the window. In some wooden fences, there were many strange-looking cattle and sheep. Perhaps they were the wild domesticated breeds of the grasslands. They were different from the cattle and sheep Xiao Xian had seen before. Further away, there were also some people who were herding herds of cattle and sheep back home. Right? Didn't they say that the tribes on the grasslands would also take in some wanderers? Where do they live? Xiao Xian asked several experienced people next to him. The wanderers don't live here. This is where the people of the Feng tribe live. Sometimes they entertain guests here. But other than that, the wanderers live over there. The man said, pointing in one direction. Xiao Xian looked in the direction he was pointing. There was a big green mound there, and on the other side of the mound there were tourists. Although the people of the Feng tribe usually asked the wanderers for help and gave them a small reward, they were still on guard. Over the hills, Xiao Xian could see some mountains that were not very high. The peaks of the mountains were covered with green. There weren't many trees, and most of them were grasslands and stones. Further away, he could vaguely see some mountains with white peaks. That was the territory of other tribes. Hearing that the travel team had come, many people of the Feng tribe brought things to trade with the travel team. Xiao Xian didn't want to trade. He had hunted a cow on the way, and there was still a lot of roasted meat left. The remaining water moonstones would be used in the central region. However, when Xiao Xian was bored on the raft, He used some animal bones and horns to polish and carve some things. He had 2 bone knives and several bone ornaments carved into various ferocious beasts. A middle-aged man traded them for a leg of lamb. That man liked these things very much, so he traded them for his children. When the sky gradually darkened, fewer people came to trade. After eating, the people of the travel tribe went to rest. Looking at the dark sky, Xiao Xian planned to go to the place where the wanderers lived tomorrow. He had a feeling that he could find the person he was looking for here. Chapter 179. The sun rose. It seemed to be another day similar to yesterday, but for some people on the grassland it was different. For example, the people of the Feng tribe, who wanted to exchange things with the traveling team, were thinking about what to take and what to exchange. For example, the people who had been guarding against the sky could rest today. Usually there would be big birds flying over and taking away their livestock, but today there was a bigger bird in the sky instead of those figures that usually gave them headache. Another example was an old man who lived in the wanderer area of the Feng tribe. For old he, today was a special day. Every year on this day, he would come to the top of the mountain, facing a direction, praying and singing. He didn't know when it started, but his ancestors had set such a rule. Every year on this day, he would come here to pray and sing, to remember the words that had been passed down from a long time ago, as well as the name of the tribe that no one knew. Old he was also used to coming here every year at this time to inherit the will of his ancestors and fulfill their wishes. Every time this happened, that magical dream would appear in old he's mind. Every detail was very clear, including the rising flames and the 2 horns surrounded by flames. It seemed to be the same as what his ancestors had said. Sometimes, he couldn't even tell whether it was a dream or reality, his imagination or reality. Did the tribe still exist? Every time he had such doubts, he would stand here praying and singing to strengthen his belief. Many wanderers didn't understand his behavior, and some people would pity him, but he didn't care. He just insisted and liked to sing like this. Every time, he would forget all the depression and troubles, throw away other worries, and sing for a whole day here. Today, as in previous years, he went up the mountain with a straw bag filled with barbecue and a kettle. The mountains in the territory of the Feng tribe were not high. This was already the highest place. He wanted to go to the top of a higher mountain, but it was not the territory of the Feng tribe. He would probably be killed as an intruder before he could reach the top, not to mention that it was not the territory of the Feng tribe. Standing on the top of the green mountain, old he took a deep breath, and just like in previous years, he sang loudly. His singing spread from the top of the mountain to other places. Some people nearby also heard it, but they didn't care at all. Every day there would be people singing. As for what they were singing and how well they were singing, they did not care at all and continued to do their own things. Since the beginning of the world, our ancestors have been here. When the tribe rose, hunting was the priority. As the spring warmed up, the ice and snow disappeared. The birds and beasts jumped happily, and the birds sang and the beasts roared. The hunters went far away. Old he stood alone on the top of the mountain, facing one direction. As he sang, he suddenly heard a second voice. Someone had joined him in singing the same song as him. The song he sang was the hunting song passed down from his ancestors, and it was the only song he knew. He hadn't even learned the songs the people of the Feng tribe often sang. Because he only knew this song, old he often sang it when everyone sang. Even if some people around him didn't know how to sing, they could still sing a few lines with him. However, for some reason, the songs sung by others and by old he were obviously the same, but they gave people a completely different feeling. The former sang as if they were mourning, and the more they sang, the more sorrowful they became. On the other hand, the more the latter sang, the more high-pitched and in high spirits. Perhaps only the people of the Yanjiao tribe could sing such a sad song so heroically. Therefore, at first, when old he heard someone singing with him, he just thought it was someone nearby. He didn't turn around, but still stood there and continued to sing. But soon, he found that the other party could actually sing such a long song. Not only that, the other party sang better than him. As for why he could recognize it, was there a need to ask? The other party's singing was not as sad as the others at all. On the contrary, it made old he feel more excited. Obviously, some of the tones were different from what he remembered, but old he had a feeling that this was how the song should be sung. The other party was right behind him. Old he wanted to turn around and see who it was, and ask where it was from. However, old he didn't look back. He had to finish singing this song, or it would be disrespectful to his ancestors. In order to hunt, you travel day and day deep into the mountain. You come back from hunting with no empty baggage. You have the ability to recognize the tracks of beasts. As he sang, old he was immersed in that wonderful state again. He saw a pair of flaming horns, which seemed to be close at hand, but couldn't be touched. He always felt that it was still a little bit away. After singing the whole hunting song, old he still hadn't recovered from that state. After waiting for about half an hour, old he gradually came back to his senses. Thinking of the person who had just sung with him, old he turned around and saw a young man he had never seen before. "Hey, which family are you from? Why are you here?" Old he asked. Xiao Xian was even more puzzled. "Have you seen someone like me? Who are you? What's your name?" Old he drank some water and asked. "My name is Xiao Xian." After thinking for a while, Xiao Xian added, "I'm from the Yanjiao tribe." Old he glanced at Xiao Xian, and his eyes seemed to say, "You said nonsense." After drinking water and resting for a while, old he called Xiao Xian, "No matter where you're from, come and sing with me again." Xiao Xian. That's it? After experiencing Yan Shua's strong and excited reaction, Xiao Xian really didn't know how to deal with such a calm person. So, he went over and sang with old he again. After singing for the second time, old he sat on the ground and rested for a while. "Where are you from?" old he asked at this time. "I came here with the traveling team over there," Xiao Xian answered. "Hey! You're not afraid of danger. Those traveling teams don't have good tempers. You should have met good people this time," old he said. "Why did you have to face that direction when you were singing?" Xiao Xian asked. "You don't know?" Old he looked at Xiao Xian with reproachful eyes. "That's the old land of our tribe. Remember, don't forget it in the future." After chatting with old he for a while, Xiao Xian knew the reason why old he came here to sing. It seemed that every person in the Yanjiao tribe was very persistent. They lived in their own way and kept the beliefs in their hearts. Old he's son was gone, his daughter-in-law ran away, and his wife stayed at home to take care of his sick grandson. It was the only day in a year that old he would come here to sing. Last year, he also came here with his grandson. Unfortunately, his grandson was seriously ill these days, so old he came here alone. When he sang, he also prayed to his ancestors, hoping that they would bless his little grandson so that he could recover. Many people on the prairie got sick and died. After resting for a while, old he began to sing again. He also pulled Xiao Xian to sing with him. He always felt that when he sang with Xiao Xian, it was particularly exciting. It was a kind of blood-boiling passion, like a hunting warrior who was about to go to war. Xiao Xian sang with the old man over and over again. The sun rose and gradually began to set before old he really stopped singing. After singing, it was time to go back. Old he went down the mountain with Xiao Xian. He also asked Xiao Xian about his next plan. When he heard that Xiao Xian wanted to go to the central region, old he didn't agree. "It's too far and too dangerous. You're just a boy with no ability. How can you go to the central region with those travelers? The central region is more dangerous than other places." I advise you to go back to where you used to live. Maybe you can't live well, but at least you can stay alive. Only when you're alive can you have hope. You look quite strong, so I guess you must have a good life. If you really can't find a place to stay, you can stay with me. Life on the grassland is difficult, but it's much better than those drifting around. Old He persuaded. It's all right. Don't worry. I can protect myself. Xiao Xian said. Young man, don't think that you can run around just because you're strong. Although we're strong, we're still very weak compared to those totem warriors. But I'm a totem warrior. What? I said, I'm a totem warrior, and an intermediate one. Hey, be careful. Before Xiao Xian finished his words, he saw the old man's foot twist and roll down the mountain. If Xiao Xian hadn't quickly caught him, Old He would have probably rolled farther, and even hit those protruding stones. Old He was carried back from the mountain by Xiao Xian. His foot was sprained, but fortunately, there were no other injuries. Old He's wife was taking care of her grandson at home. When she saw Xiao Xian carrying the old man back, she hurriedly went up to check on his injury. It's all right. It's just a sprained foot. Hey, Xiao Xian, hurry up. Where were we? Go on. Who else is in the tribe? What did the shaman teach you? Old He didn't answer his wife's question, nor did he care about the injury on his foot. He just let Xiao Xian continue talking about the Yinjiao tribe. After putting Old He on the wooden bed and applying medicine, Xiao Xian said, I thought you already knew. You were so calm. How would I know that you really came from the Yinjiao tribe? I thought you were a wanderer. Speaking of this, Old He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had misunderstood. In the past, when several tribes on the grassland had friendly exchanges, he would go with them and see wanderers like him. They would tell each other their troubles, then come back and continue their lives. Everyone hoped that one day they could return to the tribe, but generation after generation, from birth to death, this wish was not realized. Old He once thought that maybe this was the end of his life. His grandfather, his grandfather's grandfather, and some of his ancestors had all lived on the grassland, helping the tribes here. He didn't know how long they had lived here. The only thing he still had was the words passed down from generation to generation, the things he needed to know. Because we have lived here for a long time, we are good people, we are strong, and we work hard. The people of the tribe are a little lenient with us, like the people of the Feng tribe. Sometimes they even let me help with the herding. So, don't worry, we can still hold on. Wait for the day when the tribe comes back. You know how to herd? Xiao Xian asked. Yes, I've been doing this for a long time. Do you know how to raise those animals? Xiao Xian asked again. Of course I know how to. Those of us who live on the grassland all know how to do it. Xiao Xian thought to himself, what a talent. If it were the people on the other side of the river, the animals would be in the pot. Chapter 180. Xiao Xian applied the medicine to Old He's wound. The medicine he applied was made by himself, from the herbs he picked during the rest of the journey. Old He's grandson looked only about 6 years old, but in fact, he was almost 8 years old. He was thin and small. Because he caught a cold, he was sleeping after taking the medicine. Xiao Xian also brought some herbs from the tribe to strengthen the body. He gave some to Old He. Totem warriors can use these herbs directly. When you drink it, put less herbs at a time, but add more water. People who hadn't awakened their totem power, like the children in the Yinjiao tribe, were weak. Drinking these herbs could make them feel better, or at least strengthen their resistance. In fact, I also have some herbs here. Take them with you. Although you're a totem warrior, totem warriors can get hurt sometimes. These herbs are good for you. Old He asked his wife to pack some herbs for Xiao Xian. There were only 2 elders and 1 child in Old He's family. Xiao Xian looked around and helped them chop some firewood, cut some trees from the mountain, moved some stones, and helped them repair the house. When he finished, it was already dark. He roasted the lamb leg he got from the Feng tribe and cooked some wild vegetable soup. Xiao Xian and Old He's family finished eating, then got up and left. Old He wanted to keep Xiao Xian here to talk more. He still had a lot of questions to ask Xiao Xian, but looking at the sky outside, he didn't stay any longer. You rest first. I'll come back tomorrow, Xiao Xian said before leaving. With Xiao Xian's words, Old He felt more at ease. When Xiao Xian returned to the resting place of the traveling team, everyone was discussing the things they had exchanged with the Feng tribe. You had gotten some good furs. Of course, the most important thing was that he had gotten some herbs from the grassland that he had never seen before. These were what excited him the most. Xiao Xian, do you know that there are many poisonous plants on this grassland? You asked. Yes, I've heard about it. Xiao Xian had heard Old He mention it when he was chatting with him today. For people like you, those were treasures, but for the people on the grassland, those were demons. Not all green represented life, some represented death. Many times, when the herds of cattle and sheep on the grasslands were grazing, they would accidentally eat the plants that looked similar to the food they usually ate and thus die. That kind of poisonous grass could kill livestock and bring great losses to the people in the tribe. What was even more troublesome for the people in the tribe was that the poisonous grass had strong vitality and reproductive ability. As long as the roots were preserved, they would grow again in a short time. Even if all the poisonous weeds in the grasslands were cleared this year, they would still be covered in poisonous weeds in the coming year. This was because the seeds of many poisonous plants were spread by the wind, or their germination would be delayed by a few years, making them extremely difficult to clean up. One of the reasons why wanderers were needed on the grassland was because of these poisonous grasses. There were too many poisonous weeds, and the people in the tribe were not willing to spend too much energy on them. Luckily, there were wanderers, so they only needed to pay a small amount to make them work. What the wanderers needed was the tribe's protection. In some tribes, the poisonous weeds grew too fast, and there were not enough people and time to eliminate them. When livestock died, the healthy grassland shrank significantly. They would start a war with other tribes wanting to snatch the grassland. Not long ago, the Feng tribe was attacked because of this. Xiao Xian looked at the poisonous grasses that you took out. Today, when he was walking on the grassland, he saw a lot of them, but there were no livestock moving around. Presumably, they had to wait until the grass was cleared before letting the cattle and sheep go. You was still studying the poisonous grasses that he was interested in, while Xiao Xian leaned against the wooden wall, thinking about something. Compared to Yan Shuo, Old He's situation was really good. Although life was a little difficult, and there were occasional wars between the tribes, overall it was still peaceful. Perhaps because of this peace there was no need to face all kinds of threats from people and things every day, and there was no need to deal with all kinds of serious crises. Many wanderers of the Yanjiao tribes on the grassland did not show totem patterns like Yan Shuo's. There were very few people who could show faint patterns. This was the situation that Xiao Xian learned from Old He. Xiao Xian originally thought that when the time came, he would find these people and bring them back to the Yanjiao tribe across the river. But now it seemed that it would be very difficult. There were many young adults, but after all, they were not totem warriors, and their abilities were limited. Moreover, there were many old, weak, sick, and disabled people. Xiao Xian did not intend to give up on these people. But now, he needed to think of a way to better solve this problem. Perhaps, when the shaman let Xiao Xian come here to find other Yanjiao tribesmen, he did not expect to encounter such a situation. People like Old He, who were old and had not awakened their totem power, simply could not travel safely. Telling the tribes on the grassland to treat the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe well? It was useless. This method did not work on the grassland. If it was a big tribe like the Thousand Masks tribe, even if the other side was not willing to, they would still change their attitude and not be so harsh. But now, if you went and told them that I am from the Yanjiao tribe, they would look at you with disdain. Most of the time, the other party would squint at you. Who the hell is the Flaming Horns tribe? Strength, fame, and the benefits brought by it made every tribe hope that their tribe would become more and more prosperous. There was no real peaceful diplomacy here. Most of the strong tribes were very strong, such as the Thousand Masks tribe. Only when they were strong enough and powerful enough would they make people afraid. After thinking about it, Xiao Xian decided to take some people back to the tribe first. When the tribe came from the other side, he would call back the scattered tribesmen. The next day, Xiao Xian went to Old He's place again. Old He's foot injury was much better. Although he had not awakened his totem power, and was not even as strong as Yan Shuo, he was still a Yanjiao tribesman, and the blood of the Yanjiao tribe flowed in his body. Old He's grandson was much better. He had a good meal yesterday, and was in good spirits today. He even helped his grandmother to weed the grass in the grassland. Xiao Xian also went to help. Old He moved slowly with a limp. He could not stay idle, and while digging the grass, he talked to Xiao Xian. In fact, my father also showed his totem pattern, but it was very little and very shallow. I remember that I was still young at that time. At night, when I was about to go to sleep in my room, suddenly there was a warning horn from the Feng tribe. My father said that there was a wolf attack. That night, my father participated in the defense of the Feng tribe and killed several wolves. When he came back, I saw the pattern on his face. He said that it was the totem pattern of the Yanjiao tribe's totem warriors. Speaking of his father, Old He's face was full of pride. Every time he talked with the wanderers of other tribes, he would mention this. Xiao Xian listened to Old He while digging out the poisonous grass. Yesterday, he had learned about these poisonous grass from you, and knew which grass in this grassland was poisonous and which was not. The tribe asked the wanderers to dig out the poisonous grass. If there were dead lambs and calves in the area, the wanderers would not be able to get rewards from the tribe, but would be beaten or even driven out of the territory of the tribe. Outside the territory of the tribe, there would be many dangers from people or beasts. If they could not find a safe place to stay for a long time, the people who were driven out would soon die. However, there were poisonous grass in this grassland, and naturally there would be other herbs. Xiao Xian also found several kinds of poisonous grass when he was digging, many of which were reminded by Old He. These herbs were relatively common in this grassland, and were rare in other places. While he was digging, not far ahead, a child about the same age as Old He's grandson was dragging a piece of wood thicker than him with a straw rope. Although the child was much stronger than Old He's grandson, his face turned red with suffocation when he pulled such a piece of wood. Old He saw the child and asked, "Gua what are you doing with the wood?" Gua family and Old He's family had cooperated for a long time. The grassland that Old He was digging was the place where Gua family often grazed. Sometimes Old He would help Gua family to guard the sheep. "Hey, Old He, come and help me!" Gua shouted when he saw Old He. Xiao Xian stopped Old He, who was about to come forward, and went to pull the wood that Gua was dragging. The wood didn't look obvious, but it was actually quite heavy. However, this weight was nothing for Xiao Xian. In the forest of the hunting area, Xiao Xian had seen stronger and heavier wood. The wood that Gua dragged was very thick, but not long, only half a meter. People of the Feng tribe didn't like to use wood as weapons. Most of the time they would chop it and burn it, or use it to build houses, tents and fences. After Gua came over, he sat down on the ground, gasping. He didn't answer Old He, but looked up and down at Xiao Xian, who helped him pull the wood. Although Old He's grandson was about the same age as Gua children in the tribe rarely played with children of wanderers. Wanderers were not slaves, but they were still looked down upon. After all, wanderers needed to rely on these tribes to survive. Therefore, when Gua came, he always ordered Old He around, and once fought with old He's grandson. But because the two families had known each other for a long time and needed each other, they didn't make a big fuss. After observing for a while, Gua asked Xiao Xian, "Are you a member of the traveling team? I haven't seen you in the tribe." "Yes, I am." Xiao Xian lifted the wood easily and put it in front of Gua leaned forward and asked, "Did you carve a few beasts with the bones of the animals? They are so big, and one of them looks like this," Gua said as he gestured. Xiao Xian nodded. "That's what I carved." He also exchanged some things for those carvings. Getting Xiao Xian's affirmation, Gua's eyes brightened. He moved closer to Xiao Xian, with an expectant smile on his face. "Can you carve another one? Use this wood I brought." Xiao Xian looked at Gua silently and showed a thoughtful look. "What can you exchange for it?" Chapter 181. With what? Gua was stunned for a while. Yesterday, he saw that his little friend had several exquisite and lifelike bone carvings, and he showed them off in their small group. Gua also wanted a wood carving. Compared with these, the wood carvings made by other people in the tribe were not at the same level. Gua heard that he wanted to exchange with the traveling team, so he went there to look for him, but he didn't find him. So he planned to find a tree first, and then ask someone to carve a wood carving for him. Yes, Gua didn't like bone carvings, stone carvings were second. Compared to stone carvings, Gua wanted wood carvings more. Stone carvings were too easy to break. His grandfather had also carved something for him. Carvings were naturally made of very common stones. If he wasn't careful, he would break it. In contrast, several wood carvings were still in good condition. Even if many people thought that wood carvings were more fragile than stone carvings, he still preferred wood carvings. Today, Gua took advantage of his father's patrol and shamelessly followed him. He also asked his father to cut a stump for him and drag it back. He didn't expect to meet Xiao Xian here. When Gua went to the traveling team to find people, he carefully asked about Xiao Xian's appearance. Just now, he was just suspicious. Now that he got the confirmation, he was naturally very happy. However, Xiao Xian's question stumped him again. Yes, people in the traveling team all needed to exchange with things. These people were not his family members, so they wouldn't do things for free. What to exchange with? Sheep? Cattle? If he dragged it out to exchange, would he be beaten by his mother when he went back? After that, his father would beat him. He didn't think about it before. Now thinking about it carefully, Gua was a little hesitant. But he really wanted a wood carving like that, which was better than his grandfather's. Unfortunately, neither his father nor his mother would exchange things for a wood carving or stone carving. They thought it was not worth it and not worthwhile. This was also the reason why Gua envied his little friend very much. Gua couldn't think of a way and was anxious. He was afraid that Xiao Xian would refuse. He grabbed his hair and opened his mouth several times, but didn't know what to say. "Well," Xiao Xian said when Gua was hesitating, "you promise me one thing, as long as it is within my power, I will carve for you." "What is it?" Gua asked. "Help old He and the others more often. For example, don't let little Anai be bullied by others. If old He's family is in trouble, help them to the best of your ability. What do you think?" Anai was the name of old He's grandson. Gua and the others would not accept Anai, and Anai was often bullied. Xiao Xian wanted to fight back for him, but it wasn't appropriate for him to intervene in a battle between children. Besides, old He's family still needed to live here, and the Feng tribe wasn't a place where they would compromise just because you were strong. You don't even have this ability? Of course it's possible, Gua said with a stiff neck. From the chat with old He, Xiao Xian also knew that Gua's father had some power in the tribe, and Gua also had a certain influence in his small group. If this kid didn't make things difficult for them, and if he could help them, Old He's family would naturally be able to live a better life here until the Yanjiao tribe came back. Gua Er didn't think what Xiao Xian said was difficult, but he wasn't too stupid and knew how to bargain. I promise you, but you have to carve well, and can't be worse than the bone carvings you gave others before. Okay. I'll watch from the side. If you don't do it well, I won't agree. Okay. Xiao Xian had polished several small stone knives with good quality during the journey. Those animal bones weren't very hard, so these small stone knives were enough to carve wood. Naturally, they could also be used to carve wood. Since Gua Er said he would carve here, Xiao Xian didn't move. The wood brought by Gua Er was good. The texture was fine and tough, and it wasn't easy to deform, so the carving effect should be better. What do you want to carve? Xiao Xian asked. I want. Gua Er thought carefully and said, wolf, I want a wolf. Compared with those animals that he had never seen and wouldn't appear on the grassland, Gua Er wanted a wolf wood carving more. Wolves were very common on the grassland. Although the people of the Feng tribe also hunted wolves, they still had a little reverence for wolves. If the wolves didn't attack the tribe and didn't take away their livestock, they wouldn't attack the wolves. I want a majestic head wolf, Gua Er said with a longing face. Xiao Xian didn't quite understand this child's obsession with a head wolf, but Old He next to him told him the reason. In some tribes on the grassland there was a story. Of course, in fact, no one knew which tribe's ancestors had made up the story. It was said that a tribe was often attacked by wolves. The tribe's shaman predicted that the wolves would attack a warrior's house, so he used a stone to carve a wolf and put it in front of the warrior's house. In the evening, when the wolves came, they saw the stone carving and thought it was the Wolf King, so they were scared away. This kind of story was only believed by children. When they grew up, they no longer believed it. However, Gua Er still believed in it. But he also knew that not everyone had the ability of the shaman in the story. What's more, the wood he brought back was not big, so naturally it couldn't be compared with the wood carving in the story. He just wanted a wood carving like that to satisfy his desire. Wolf. Xiao Xian's first thought was Caesar, who was left in the tribe. After being carved, Caesar was qualified to be the head wolf. Not only did he succeed in his revenge, but he could also fight against the ferocious beasts in the forest. Xiao Xian didn't know how strong he was now. Recalling Caesar's appearance and his appearance when hunting in the forest, Xiao Xian began to carve. Gua Er still wanted to learn some carving skills, but unexpectedly, the person in front of him moved faster and faster. At first, he could still see the movement of each cut, and pieces of wood were cut down, but soon, he couldn't keep up with Xiao Xian's speed. The only thing he could see was the splashing wood chips like rainstorm, which forced him to step back several steps. Gua Er wanted to ask some questions, but found that the carver in front of him seemed to be immersed in some kind of state, which made people unable to get involved. Old He grabbed some splashing wood chips with his hand, and stared at Xiao Xian. He couldn't see clearly the movement of Xiao Xian's arm, but he could see clearly the totem pattern on Xiao Xian's face. It was the totem pattern of the Yanjiao tribe, much clearer than his father's. Carving a wood carving didn't necessarily need totem power, but Xiao Xian would naturally use it when he was serious about carving. The stone knives in his hand were not so easy to use. Many times, in order to carve the desired effect more accurately, the strength and speed needed to be controlled well, without the slightest mistake. Xiao Xian practiced fine and precise control when learning stone crafting, which also made carving much easier. The four people around him couldn't help but stop what they were doing and stared at Xiao Xian. As the wood chips fell quickly, the wood carving in Xiao Xian's hand gradually took shape. Gua Er's breath gradually became heavier. He had never seen anyone carve like this. At the same time, he had a feeling that this wood carving was what he wanted, and even better than he had imagined. When Xiao Xian stopped carving the stone knife in his hand, he held the wood carving, which had already taken shape but but was covered with a layer of wood chips in his other hand, and blew on it. The wood chips covering the wood carving flew up and left the wood carving. Under the dazzling yang guang, it was like sprinkling a handful of gold powder. And the wood carving also showed its true appearance. It was a very strong wolf, and the viewers could even feel the strong muscles under the fur. It stood there with its head held high, without baring its teeth, howling, or raising its claws. It just stood there, with its head slightly tilted, as if it was looking at something not worth mentioning. With a kind of indescribable power, it seemed that everything in front of it couldn't pass it, and could only retreat. The wood carving was not big, it looked like the size of a puppy, but it gave people a completely different feeling. Are you satisfied with this? Xiao Xian held the wood carving in his hand and asked Gua. Yes, yes. Gua excitedly reached out to receive it carefully. So, do you remember what you promised before? Xiao Xian asked again. What promise? Oh yes, of course I remember. Take care of old he and the others. Looking at the wood carving in his hand, Gua felt that this deal was really satisfactory. Once a promise is made, it's hard to take it back. Gua was a little confused by Xiao Xian's words. That is to say, once you said this, even if you put on the 4 strongest horses in your tribe, it's hard to catch up with them. You can't take back your words, and you must keep your promise. Xiao Xian explained simply. Of course. Gua now only wanted to take the wood carving back, so he didn't stay any longer. He got up and left. After Gua left, Xiao Xian turned his head and met the eyes of old he's grandson, little Anai. You also want a wood carving? Xiao Xian asked. Yes. Anai nodded heavily. What kind? Also a wolf. No need, Xiao Xian rubbed Anai's half-long hair and said, At that time, you will see the real one. It's much more majestic than that. Not only a wolf, but also a cave lion, a big-headed forest raccoon, and many more. Xiao Xian told old he's family some things about the tribe, and also carved a totem with a stone, a pair of flaming horns. Old he was old, and had experienced too many things. Countless setbacks and blows, ups and downs. Now, although he was not calm, he was much calmer than Yan Shuo. It was just that his hand, which could usually hold the stone pickaxe steadily, was trembling when he held the small totem with 2 horns, and didn't calm down for a long time. After a long while, old he turned to a direction, carefully put the stone carving in front of him, and then kowtowed in the way of the Yanjiao tribe. Anai and old he's wife also kowtowed. After kowtowing, old he stood up. The tribe used to be in that direction, but they left later on. I've never been there. I only know that the old haunt is there. My father told me about it, and my father also learned about it from my grandfather. It was passed down from generation to generation. They said that although the tribe left the old land, the roots are still there. If the tribe still exists, one day, the tribe will return to the old land and rekindle the fire. Xiao Xian, you don't have to look for the lost tribesmen one by one. There are many wanderers in the Yanjiao tribe. Maybe many people don't know where they belong, and many people don't know the past, and can't see the future. But, when the fire is rekindled in the old land, all the wanderers in the Yanjiao tribe will be able to go home. Chapter 182. Old he said that the roots of the Yanjiao tribe were still in the old land, and the veins of the fire were still there. The fire must be ignited in the old land. Xiao Xian really didn't know this. Maybe the shaman knew, but didn't say it. No wonder those ancestors wanted to go back to the old land, and there was such a reason. For the tribesmen who were wandering outside, and for the tribe to prosper again, the return of the tribe was really necessary. Many people were waiting to welcome a new life. The travel team would not stay in the Feng tribe for a long time. After all, they were just passing by and used it as a place to rest before reaching the central region. After a good rest and enough preparation, the leaders called the people in the team and prepared to set off. Xiao Xian left some things for Old He's family, and exchanged some cattle and sheep for them. Old He didn't take the water moon stone. There were 2 old people and 1 young in his family, and they had no fighting power. If other wanderers were jealous and wanted to kill them, it would not be worthwhile. Fortunately, Gua Er had promised to take care of them, so Old He's family would not be too difficult. Even if it was difficult, Old He didn't care, because there was hope. Maybe, in a few years, he could take his family and wanderers living in other places back to the tribe. What a blessing to be able to return in his lifetime. After saying goodbye to Old He, Xiao Xian and the travel team left the Feng tribe. Not long after the traveling team left, Gua Er's father came back from his patrol. After entering the house, he wanted to ask Gua Er what he had done with the wood that he had dragged back. If he hadn't dealt with it, he would have chopped it into firewood. Opening the leather curtain, he stepped into the house. However, when his eyes met an object somewhere in the house, his scalp tightened, and his hand quickly pulled out the knife on his waist. However, before he took the next step, a figure rushed out and let out a heart-wrenching cry. "Father!" Gua Er held his father's leg tightly. "Father, we have so much firewood. Don't cut my wood carving." Wood carving? Gua Er's father was stunned and looked over there carefully again. It's true. No wonder he felt a little strange. It was just a wood carving. However, it was really not easy to carve a wooden sculpture like this. When he first saw it, he thought that he had encountered some wild beast from the forest. Where did this wood carving come from? Gua Er's father put away his knife and walked over. He looked at the wood carving in front of him with great interest. "Didn't I tell you? It's a piece of wood I dragged back. I asked that traveler called Xiao Xian to carve it." Gua Er told his father about the matter and also mentioned that he had promised to take care of Old He's family. After that, he was a little worried. He lowered his head and quickly raised his eyelids to look at his father for fear of being beaten. Unexpectedly, Gua Er's father was silent for a while and then said, "Just do what you promised." Xiao Xian, who had already left the Feng tribe, didn't know the conversation between Gua Er and his father. He and the others continued to walk along another river. The upper reaches of this river were deep in the grassland, and the lower reaches would converge with another tributary. The combined river would flow through some places in the central region. This time they didn't have a raft, so they had to walk. Just like what those travelers had said, after several days of continuous travel, the destination was close. "If we go a little further, we will be in the central region. Tell the people in the team to pay attention. In front of us is the territory of 2 big tribes in the central region. Don't provoke them." Some experienced travelers warned the newcomers. Tribes that could establish themselves in the central region, no matter how big or small, always had their uniqueness. Some ordinary small tribes couldn't compare with them. Generally speaking, these tribes in the central region wouldn't take the initiative to attack travelers' teams. When they arrived here, they would meet many travelers from different places. However, now they wouldn't greet each other so peacefully. They were all on guard against each other. When they passed by a hilly area, several travelers next to them said to Xiao Xian, "Look over there." Next to the travelers' team was a continuous low hill area. On these hills, there was a group of mountain rock paintings with tribal characteristics. The painting on the rock paintings wasn't very detailed, and it didn't look like a human. However, there was a face that belonged to a human. On the huge, independent rectangular rock in front of Xiao Xian, there was such a painting. On the top was a human face with a round face and a wide mouth. What was strange was that under the face, the body part looked similar to that of an ordinary person, but there were 2 more pairs of hands. The painting style was rough and exaggerated. It was like a person with a strange body proportion with 6 hands standing there. His mouth was wide open, and his 6 hands were spread out. His 2 legs were also spread out at a certain angle. It looked like a spider with a human face. The person in the painting looked at the passers-by passing by. Behind him, on other parts of the rock, there were some crisscrossing lines. It didn't look like they were randomly chiseled. Instead, they were drawn in a regular pattern with a purpose. "What is this?" Yu asked the experienced travelers next to him, wanting to get a more precise answer from them. As for Xiao Xian, when he saw this painting, he already knew who it was. The 8 Limbs tribe had been painted and recorded on the ancestors' animal skin roll and the stone wall of the cave. In the cave near the mountain foot area, when Xiao Xian saw the painting on the stone wall for the first time, he thought it was a spider. Later, when he read more animal skin rolls, he knew that it wasn't a spider, but an 8-limbed weirdo like a spider. There were some huge black rocks next to it, which were also carved with various faces and 8-limbed weirdos. Look, it was indeed a big tribe in the central area. They had started to draw boundaries and set up boundary markers so far away, as if they were afraid that others didn't know it was the 8 Limbs tribe. As far as the eye could see, there was a group of mountain rock paintings, all of which were very characteristic of the 8 Limbs tribe. People who passed by here, even if they didn't have good memories, would be engraved in their minds by the long group of mountain rock paintings. It was hard to forget. The man next to him said, "We haven't really entered the territory of the 8 Limbs tribe. The place we are going is between the 8 Limbs tribe and the Mang tribe." Jade in the Mang forest and silk clothes of the 8 Limbs, are these two tribes? You had long heard from some travelers about these two strong tribes in the central area and the products produced by these two tribes. However, he had never seen the jade of the Mang tribe, nor the clothes made of silk in the legend. Jade in the Mang forest and silk clothes of the 8 Limbs tribe were famous products of these two tribes. Both the jade in the Mang forest and the silk clothes produced by the 8 Limbs tribe were very expensive. Generally speaking, for small tribes from remote areas, they wouldn't exchange these two products, because it was unnecessary. Linen had already made many people flinch. If there was a more expensive silk clothes, even if they brought it back, they would just put it aside. In short, their consumption level hadn't reached that high, so they couldn't appreciate it. For people who paid more attention to practical use, it was even more useless. In addition to the rock paintings of the 8 Limbs tribe, there are also the marks of the Mang tribe nearby. Look, there is the totem mark of the Mang tribe in front. The traveler next to him pointed out to Xiao Xian and Yu. There was a bamboo forest over there. It wasn't very tall, but it was very thick and looked very sturdy. Those leaves could even wrap Xiao Xian's hand. Almost every thick bamboo was engraved with pictures, which looked like the totem patterns of the Mang tribe. Other than that, there were also some things that looked like wind chimes hanging on the bamboo. The strings of bamboo collided with each other with the wind, making sounds of different pitches. It was very pleasant to the ears. Under normal circumstances, many people would go over to chop the bamboos or take away those bamboo-wood wind chimes that could play music. But in fact, very few people would touch those things, just like most people didn't dare to cut the rock paintings on the hills of the 8 Limbs tribe. That was the symbol of the two tribes. Whoever touched it would be a provocation to the two tribes. The members of the travel team would not commit such a suicidal act. It was precisely because of this that before they came, they had repeatedly warned the people who were traveling for the first time not to offend those powerhouses without knowing the situation. Because travelers often passed by this place, a very obvious path had been opened up. On the left side of this road, there was a long row of rock paintings of the hills. The 8-limbed people of the 8 Limbs tribe were in the shape of Vajra glaring at the passers-by, which brought a lot of psychological pressure to every traveler, and made them more afraid of the 8 Limbs tribe. Strong people were strong, even their paintings were so powerful. On the other side of the road, there was a completely different style of bamboo paintings and wind chimes. The refreshing style did not make everyone feel relaxed. Instead, every time there was a knock on the bamboo, everyone's heart tightened. It was as if there were pairs of eyes staring at them from the bamboo forest. It was like a death sentence, causing the group to unconsciously speed up, not to mention touching the bamboo and wind chimes. This was the demonstration of the strong. In their own way, they let the passers-by remember their strength, not just the jade stones and silk clothes. After they passed that section, there were no more rock paintings of the hills, and the knock of the bamboos gradually faded away. Only then did they let out a sigh of relief. Their nervous mood also gradually calmed down. Further ahead there will be a valley. It's a very good place for trading. And because it's very close to the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, no one dares to make trouble there. A traveler in front said. Soon, Xiaoxian saw the trading place. It was like a small market, with some wooden and bamboo houses scattered around. There were also many travelers from different places, or people from nearby tribes trading here. Because there were two big mountains behind them, they sometimes had to offer some gifts to the people of the two tribes. Entering this market, Xiaoxian felt that it became lively all of a sudden. Some people put their goods on the ground, and at the bottom, there was a layer of grass curtain or animal skin. And some people set up a simple shelf and put their goods on it. It was a very simple market, but it was the biggest and busiest trading place that Xiaoxian had seen since he came to this world. Chapter 183. There were a lot of pottery around, as well as painted pottery with various patterns. Pottery figurines, pottery reliefs, and many colorful paintings that represented the characteristics of each tribe were not only practical, but also beautiful in form, with the mysterious and magical artistic colors of this world. Those spherical or hemispherical pottery were used as containers to carry more objects, and those with ears were used to tie rope. Not only these common objects, but also some more creative pottery, such as some pottery utensils for cooking and drinking, and those small, pointy urns. What's that for? Xiaoxian pointed to the place where some small, pointy urns and funnels were placed, and asked the person next to him. Oh, that. It's said that it's used to make wine. The person next to him answered, his eyes full of envy when he looked over there. I heard that those are wine-making utensils. Those people also use those pottery to carry wine, and it's very popular here. I went to change one of those pottery, but it didn't produce wine. However, it's still more convenient to use that kind of pottery for storage and transportation. It's not easy to flush out the stopper, and the pointy bottom is also more wear-resistant, so it's good to use. I'll change a few more later. If I can produce wine, that'll be great. What's wine? You was curious. Wine? A kind of water? That person didn't know either. I've never drunk it, but the team leader said that wine is made with food. The tribes that can make wine are all big tribes, and they don't lack food. Several young people around also showed envy. They didn't lack food, and they could enjoy material and spiritual enjoyment. Who wouldn't be envious? Many tribes in the central region developed quickly in animal husbandry and agriculture. With food surplus, there was a rapid development of handicraft industry, and there was a rich variety of art. This was also why travelers said that the central region was a very wonderful place. There was a relationship between function and decoration in the design of art. In such a place, people's labor and daily affairs were mainly for survival. After all, survival was the most important thing, and life was ranked second. Creativity was for a better life. Therefore, in all creation activities, even in such a barbaric and primitive place, the design of pottery was centered around people and practicality as the foundation. Many people in the tribe worshipped these pottery, but it was not necessarily because they followed the trend. There were many factors of worshipping the craft. Xiaoxian saw a variety of pottery on display. While the old men of the Yanjiao tribe were immersed in their antique pottery, there were already more varieties here. If the old men of the Yanjiao tribe saw this, who knew what they would think, especially Xing, who had shown off his collection of pottery in front of Xiaoxian. In addition to pottery, there were also many jade products. Most of them were in the shape of strips, half rings, or even less than half rings. A few were in the shape of bridges. Some jade stones had nothing on them, only one or a few holes. Some jade stones were engraved with complicated patterns. There were even jade ornaments that were entirely carved. Are those jade stones? Yu's eyes lit up as he looked over. Yes, those are jade stones. It's just that they are not good jade stones. When you go, pay attention. Every person in the Mang tribe is carrying a piece of jade. Most of them are in this shape. That traveler gestured and drew a bridge. As for those who carry jade stones like this, you should stay far away from them. He then drew a half ring and a circle. These people belong to the higher ranks in the Mang tribe. Let's not provoke them. The surrounding youths quickly nodded. Don't just look around. Let's go find a cave to rest in. The experienced traveler called out to the youths who were looking around. Don't get separated. If you get separated here, you'll be at a disadvantage. You might even lose your life. In this lawless place, everything was naturally decided by strength. The tribes in the central region were generally stronger, so the travelers would gather in large groups to be safer. From here on out, the traveler group would not be so idle. They also did not have the time to pay attention to the scenery. They had to be on guard at all times. There were many people from other tribes around. Anyone could become their enemy. When you were not paying attention, they would stab you, rob you, and then disappear without a trace. It was not uncommon. There was a mountain not far from this market. The mountain was not very high, but there were many caves. Some were naturally formed, and some were dug out by travelers or other people. Some were big, some were small. The Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe would not care about the caves here. Whether the people who came to the market could live in the caves depended on their own strength. If they walked a little further, they would enter the territory of the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe. There were also built houses which were safer. But if they wanted to live there, they would have to exchange more things. The travelers were not willing to go there. Xiao Xian followed the group to the front of the mountain. Bang! A man who was beaten until his bones were twisted and covered in blood was thrown down from a high place. He died after 2 strokes, but the others around seemed not to have seen it. They were busy with their own things, talking about their own things. The travelers were not surprised. This kind of thing happened every day. Robbing caves, fighting over things, quarreling because they were not pleasing to the eye. They could see it all the time. But sometimes it was just a small fight, and sometimes it was a life loss. As they approached the mountain, changes gradually took place in the traveling team. The experienced and strong soldiers surrounded the injured or too young and inexperienced people in the middle. At this time, there was no division of tribes. Since they came together, they naturally had a cooperative relationship. Here, they had to be united, or they would be at a disadvantage. There were big and small caves. There were hundreds of people in this group, so they naturally needed a big cave to live in. And the competition for a big cave was also very fierce. The few leaders at the front of the group looked up the mountain. Experienced travelers could guess the general distribution of power at a glance from the people walking around outside the cave. They couldn't afford to offend those who were too strong, and those who were too weak definitely didn't live in a big place. Therefore, they targeted those groups that were not too strong but still had some ability to make a move. Over there. Fan Ning pointed in a direction. The other leaders also nodded in agreement, indicating their own people to follow. A large group of hundreds of people coming over would inevitably attract some attention. Some people had some impression of this group and were more familiar with them. They could guess their style of doing things, and some of the newcomers were asking around. To stand firm in this chaotic place, it was necessary to know yourself and know your enemy. Some of the young people who came here for the first time, the novelty and excitement at the beginning had already been affected by the oppressive gazes and the strange atmosphere around them. They did not even dare to look at those people. Raise your head, don't look like a coward. You're throwing the face of the tribe. Someone in the group said in a low voice. Xiao Xian looked at the other people on the mountain. They all looked like humans. No one had an extra pair of hands or a missing pair of legs. But there were still obvious differences in their facial features and figures. Some people had makeup on their faces, some did not. Their clothing also had different tendencies. With a rough look, one could see that this was really a hodgepodge place. It was Xiao Xian's first time seeing so many people from different tribes in one place. Walking up the mountain a little, the group went straight to a slightly bigger cave. At the entrance of that cave there were a few people sitting. Seeing the large group going over, they also called out to the people inside the cave to come out. We'll take this cave. A tall and skinny person walked out and said. Oh, Fan Ning continued to lead the group forward. Now, this is ours. Needless to say, the fight had already begun. A figure suddenly shot out from the cave. With a sound of breaking air, it rushed towards Fan Ning, who was at the front of the group. Feeling this sudden gust of wind, Fan Ning's eyes slightly narrowed. A cold light flashed through his eyes. His ankle that was walking forward suddenly turned. His shoulders shook. Instead of retreating, he went forward and met the attack head-on. The opponent's swinging leg attack was very swift and fierce. Xiao Xian did not doubt that this kick could make a person's head move. After being blocked by Fan Ning, the opponent landed on the ground and switched to using both arms. The swinging arms were like soft knives as they flew up and down. When Fan Ning dodged, the shadow of the arms directly smashed onto the rock at the side, leaving a deep mark on it. Xiao Xian was a young man, so he was also surrounded by the travelers in the middle of the group. The young people around him were silent, their eyes wide open as they stared at the dangerous battle unfolding before them. When they just arrived, the person who was beaten into a bloody mess left a very deep impression on them. Perhaps the person who lost would end up like that. Losing the cave was a small matter, but if you lose your life, then you have nothing left. But, sometimes, even though you know it's dangerous, you can't take a step back. Do you know what kind of frog is team leader Fan Ning's favorite frog? You asked Xiao Xian in a low voice. What is it? Xiao Xian looked at you. He remembered that the pattern around Fan Ning's eyes was not very special. It was different from Yu's bright poison frog pattern. The overlord frog from the horned frogs. He likes the same as the leader. You said. The leader of the Pu tribe, Guang Ho, looked like a dumpling. Later, Xiao Xian saw some of the Pu tribe's frogs that were obviously much bigger than the other frogs. Only then did he know that Guang Ho's appearance was more similar to the horned frogs. But the Pu tribe's several gigantic beasts, their temperament was very brutal. Fan Ning liked the overlord horned frogs the most. His temperament was also similar to the overlord horned frogs. Moreover, his strength was also one of the top in the Pu tribe. Although this team leader of the Pu tribe's travel team did not have a good attitude towards Xiao Xian had to admit that this person, Fan Ning, was still very capable. On the other side, Fan Ning caught the opponent's carelessness. It looked like a simple and unadorned move, a fist that was nothing special, but it carried a tyrannical force. It broke through the air and directly hit the opponent's chest. Puff! The person who took this punch was sent flying and fell on the ground 10 meters away. He struggled to get up and wanted to say something, but he spat out a mouthful of blood. The faces of many people in the opposing team changed. They looked at Fan Ning, who was standing there in fear. Although Fan Ning's body also took a few hits, and his beast skin clothes were torn and stained with blood, but compared to the person who was sent flying, Fan Ning's situation was already considered good. Moreover, Fan Ning was still standing there very calmly. Xiao Xian felt that Fan Ning's punch was actually a little restrained. On the way to the central region, he also saw Fan Ning hunting prey. At that time, he was really ruthless. If he used all his strength in that punch, the opponent would have already died. If he added more strength, the opponent's bones would probably be broken. The other party was helped up, and blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth. Even if his bones were not injured, the powerful punch just now had caused quite a bit of damage to his internal organs. It was impossible for him to continue fighting. He could feel that even though his bones were not broken, but they were already cracked. If he took another hit, he would be in a much worse state. Everyone rush up and continue fighting? Not worth it. There were still people in the opposing team who wanted to stand up and say something, but after being glanced at by Fan Ning's slightly narrowed eyes with a cold light, they retreated back. Who else? Fan Ning stood there. His line of sight swept across the crowd in front of the cave. Many people did not dare to look directly at his eyes. The tough and tyrannical aura just now, the quick and violent attack, completely broke some people's courage. Even the leader was defeated. Even if there were still many people with decent strength in the team, they could not win in terms of numbers. Looking at the opposing team, each of them was in a good state of mind, especially the leader, who stood there with a fierce face, looking like he could still fight for a few more rounds. Forget it, let's go. They could not win against the leader, they could not win in terms of numbers. They might as well save their strength to look for the next target. The group of people who were originally blocking the entrance of the cave started to pack up and leave. They planned to snatch the cave that they saw yesterday that was slightly smaller than this one. The people in that cave seemed to be easier to deal with. With such a result, you gave Xiao Xian a very proud look. Look, our leader is so domineering. At the same time, you also thought, worthy of being the one who drew the Overlord Frog's eye mark. If only Leader Fan Ning could have the same brow bone as the leader, then he would really have the look of the Overlord Frog. Not only you, many of the Pooh tribe's youngsters were also looking at Fan Ning fervently, their eyes filled with worship. On the surface, Fan Ning had the cold and solemn look of an expert, but in fact, he was also feeling bitter in his heart. If he were to fight again, he would definitely lose very miserably. Those few hits on his body had also injured his internal organs. He was only pretending that he was fine and needed to rest properly. He did not use his full strength in the last punch because he wanted to save some strength to guard against the future. Snatching the cave only needed to intimidate the opponent and force them out. Let's go in and pack up, Fan Ning said to the others. The group swarmed in. Their group was very big, but this cave was enough to accommodate all of them. Although there was not much space for them to move around, but to be able to occupy a cave here was already not bad. When everyone was happily walking in, a person's voice came out from the cave. What's all the noise about? The voice had a bit of leisure and laziness, and even had the sound of yawning. Hearing this voice, the people in the group did not expect that after they had already snatched the cave, there was still someone who dared to stay here. Could it be that someone in the previous group was sleeping too soundly and did not hear the noise? Who? Come out. We have already taken this cave, you hurry up and pack up your things and get out. One of the leaders in the group shouted with surprise and anger. Chapter 184. Tap, 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 the sound of footsteps came from inside the cave. The person inside the cave was walking out step by step. His footsteps were neither fast nor slow, with a hint of carelessness. He was not alarmed by so many strangers at the entrance of the cave. There was no bonfire in the cave. It was pitch black, so at first, the people at the entrance of the cave could not see the person inside. They were only alarmed by the sudden appearance of this person, so they all picked up their weapons and pointed them at the person walking out. In a place like this, even an inconspicuous person could cause you trouble, so you had to be cautious. Near the entrance of the cave, the light became brighter and brighter. The person walking out of the cave gradually revealed his figure. That person looked very young, wearing a linen robe. Although it was a little wrinkled, it could be seen that this linen robe was much better than the one Xiao Xian saw in the Pooh tribe. The weave was also more delicate. At the collar, there were some small bamboo pieces that were connected together to form an ornament, making the linen robe not so simple. That person raised his arm and stretched. The light at the entrance of the cave was a little dazzling. He grabbed his messy hair with one hand and looked at the person standing at the entrance of the cave. Another person? You are? The few leaders at the front of the group looked at him and asked. This cave is ours. Get out of here. There was a younger person next to him. He originally wanted to grab a better position in the cave, but when he started, he was shocked by the noise from inside the cave. As a result, his position was taken by the person behind him. Now he was not in a good mood, so his tone was naturally a little harsh. But he did not notice that the arrogant tone of the leader of his group had become much gentler. He also did not notice that some of the more experienced travelers in the group suddenly changed their expressions. Seeing that the other party did not answer, he was about to say something, but his mouth was covered by a few older people next to him and he was dragged into the group. Xiao Xian looked at the person who walked out. He knew that although linen had become popular in the central region, there were many people wearing linen in the bazaar. However, the linen on the person who walked out was much better. He even wore well-polished bamboo ornaments. Most importantly, there was a piece of jade hanging from his waist. The experienced people in the team had said that in the Mang tribe, almost everyone had a piece of jade. However, some of them had a very small arc, while others had a half-circle or even a circle. It could be said that in the Mang tribe, status was related to jade. However, the young man in front of him had a piece of jade that had a 240-degree arc on his waist. Although there were no engravings on the jade, there were some clear green lines like bamboo. It could be imagined that this person was not a nobody. Although they did not know why this person was sleeping in the cave, they could not afford to offend him. This was what the leaders thought at the same time. That person seemed to casually glance at the team of travelers and said, "I have already slept well. You can go in." No one in the team walked in, but following that person's footsteps, the team that was blocking the entrance of the cave quickly made a path for him. Some young people who did not know what was going on were pulled away by the older people around them. With no one blocking the entrance of the cave, more light from outside the cave shone in. This also allowed everyone to see this strange young man more clearly. He was quite white and did not look strong. He also did not feel strong. He did not have the imposing manner of the leader Fan Ning and the others. He was dressed well, but they did not know why everyone was so afraid of him. When everyone's eyes swept over the piece of jade hanging from his waist, the people who were cursing in their hearts just now lowered their eyelids and did not look at him. For a moment, the cave quieted down. The people who were discussing excitedly just now also shut their mouth. The atmosphere was somewhat tense. Ta-ta-ta. The sound of the other person walking slowly was very clear to everyone. Even the noise outside the cave could not cover the sound of the footstep. Suddenly, the person who was walking out of the cave stopped in his tracks and looked sideways at the team of travelers. The few leaders at the front of the team suddenly felt nervous. They exchanged glances and thought about what they should do if something unexpected happened. But they did not expect that the other person only looked at a place in the team and smiled meaningfully. "You have guts. When you go out, don't walk alone." The other people in the team followed that person's gaze and looked at a place. There, Xiao Xian was standing with a frown. After saying that sentence, that person left. He went out and stood outside the cave to stretch his body. He moved his arms and looked down the mountain. Then he jumped. This place was halfway up the mountain. The slope was a little steep. There was still some height from the ground below. However, when the people outside the cave looked down, they did not see that person's figure. "Don't look anymore. He has already left," Fan Ning said and walked in front of Xiao Xian. His face was cold. Probably because he was injured, his face looked worse. "Have you offended the people of the Mang tribe?" "No, it's my first time here. I have never seen anyone from the Mang tribe before. Xiao Xian was also puzzled. That person only spoke halfway. How could he know what he was talking about? It's best that you haven't offended them. Fan Ning snorted heavily. Because of this snort, it affected the injury in his body. He coughed a few times and almost coughed up blood. But in order to maintain his face and stabilize the morale of the team, he swallowed that mouthful of blood back. Let's clean up the cave, a leader in front said. Worried that there would be other people in the cave, they lit a fire and walked in with torches. They checked carefully, took out some rubbish and threw it outside. Then they found a place to rest. After rushing for such a long time and arriving at the central region, they had been tense. Now that they could finally get a cave, they really needed a good rest. Some of the injured people also needed to recuperate. Xiao Xian, Yu and a few others also found a place to rest. They lit a small fire and roasted the meat they brought. Only when they were full would they have strength. Xiao Xian, you really don't know that person? Yu asked. I don't know him. I also don't know what he meant by that sentence. Xiao Xian had been thinking about the reason. He even wondered if the other party had found out that he was from the Yanjiao tribe. However, he did not hear about any grievances between the Mang tribe and the Yanjiao tribe. Moreover, Xiao Xian did not feel any malice from the other party. Of course, there was no kindness either. He was just a stranger. On the other side, the person who left the cave was already near the market. He did not walk into the market. Instead, he walked about 100 meters away from the market. Whoosh! A slender spear shot at him and stabbed into the ground in front of him. Almost half of the spear was buried in the ground in an instant. Chu Su. Hand over Bai Ling. A white figure appeared in front of Chu Su from 100 meters away in the blink of an eye. It was a young woman wearing a white silk dress. At this moment, her beautiful face was filled with anger as she looked at Chu Su. Isn't it just a spider? How many days have you been chasing me? Chu Su yawned and said carelessly, You care about your spider. What about my bamboo rat, which I painstakingly raised? You will compensate me? I was planning to raise it for a few more days and make a big pot of soup to eat. But when I went back to take a look, there are only bones left. Chu Su's face turned cold as he said the last sentence. I can compensate you with my silk dress for your bamboo rat. The woman in white softened her tone and said, Hey, do you think everyone cares about the smell of spiders in your tribe? Do you think the Mang tribe has nothing good? No matter what, you have to hand over Bai Ling today. The woman in white didn't back down. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Wait. Before the woman took action, Chu Su quickly stopped her. Looking at the sky, Chu Su's line of sight stopped at a certain place. His angry face revealed a smile as he raised his palm. After a breath, a green figure flashed by and finally stopped on Chu Su's palm. It was a bird less than the size of a palm. Its wings were like knives and its tail was like a swallow's. Because of its small size, it was easy to mistake it for an insect if one didn't look carefully. What did you find? Chu Su touched the bird's head with his finger and said. The bird chirped and pecked Chu Su's finger lightly. I finally found those thieves. Chu Su's face was filled with joy. I have something to do. I won't talk to you anymore. Here you go. While speaking, Chu Su took out a white ball from a hide bag hidden in his clothes and threw it to the woman in white. The woman in white quickly caught it and looked at the white ball in her hand. It was originally a spider covered with long white hair, but now it was wrapped into a fist-sized ball. Moreover, there were several bamboo thorns on its body. It was these few bamboo thorns that caused the white spider to suffer great pain. Chu Su. The woman in white was even angrier. What are you yelling for? It's not dead yet. It's much better than my poor bamboo rat. It should be punished for eating so many of my bamboo rat. Will it die if I stab it a few times? It deserves to die. The woman in white didn't have time to say anything else. She just held back her anger and pulled out a few thin bamboo thorns on the white ball. After a while, the white ball gradually opened, and long legs with white hair stretched out. The fist-sized white ball expanded more than twice. See, it's not dead yet. If it eats my bamboo rats next time, I'll stab it to death. Chu-Su didn't want to stay here any longer. He put away the bag. I'm going to catch the thief. I'd like to see who dares to steal my bamboo rats. Do you really think I have a good temper? The green bird had already taken off, and Chu-Su followed closely behind. The woman in white hesitated for a moment, but she also followed. She also found that some of the spider webs in the tribe had been taken by someone. She didn't know if it was the same as the people in the Mang tribe who stole the jade stones and bamboo rat. After Xiao Xian ate his food and rested for a while, he went out of the cave with you and the others. The travel team was divided into two groups. One group went out to trade and the other group stayed in the cave. They took turns to go out in the morning and afternoon. Now, Fan Ning took the people of the Pu tribe out. They would first trade a batch of goods in this market. The things that were popular in the central region might not be popular when they brought them back. They had to choose according to the habits and preferences of the tribes along the river. This way they could exchange for more things when they brought them back. Just like the coarse linen cloth that Xiao Xian saw before, it was nothing here. They could casually exchange it for something else, but when they brought it back, they could exchange it for a good water moonstone, and the water moonstone could be exchanged for even more good things. Because there was no unified currency, the transactions that Xiao Xian saw were all kinds of strange items. Sometimes the buyer would take out something that the seller didn't like, so the transaction wouldn't be successful. The things that you took out from the frogs were more popular, so the transaction went smoothly. The drumming tribe's water moonstones were even more successful. If there were enough of them, Xiao Xian felt that the drumming tribe's water moonstones could be used as a unified currency. No matter which tribe the seller came from, if Xiao Xian wanted to trade with the other party, he could take out the water moonstone and succeed. No wonder the people of the Pu tribe were so excited every time they saw the people of the drumming tribe. The water moonstone was too versatile. One level higher than the water moonstone was the jade of the Mang tribe. It was also versatile in transactions, but it was much more expensive than the water moonstone. Xiao Xian had no interest in linen and pottery, but the jade from the Mang tribe had a calm and peaceful atmosphere. Maybe it had other uses for the totem warriors, but Xiao Xian felt that he didn't need it. He didn't have enough money, so he shouldn't have any ideas about the jade. Xiao Xian was walking with you and the others in the market when a square-faced man came up to them. "Do you need jade?" The man quickly glanced around, as if he was on guard against something. Then he pulled the loose sleeve of his animal skin clothes. Xiao Xian saw a few pieces of jade in the other's sleeve. Jade. Yu was a little confused. He was actually very curious about jade, but the others in the tribe said that jade was not cost-effective, so the people of the Pu tribe basically didn't trade jade. "Forget it, I don't have anything to trade for jade. If I trade for jade, I can't trade for other things." Yu refused. The other people of the Pu tribe also had the same idea, only Xiao Xian seemed to be hesitating. "This jade, how to trade?" Xiao Xian asked. "I saw that the white stone you took out just now is not bad, let's use that. But it's too eye-catching here, let's go over there." The man pointed to a place. "Xiao Xian, we'll go with you," Yu said. He heard that this kind of transaction in the market was very dangerous, and many times they moved in group. After thinking about it, Xiao Xian said to Yu and the others, "No, you guys go ahead first, I'll catch up after the transaction. I'm very interested in jade, I want to look at it for a while." Yes, we have a lot of different types of jade, some of them are carefully carved," the man quickly said. "You really don't need us to go with you?" An older man next to you asked Xiao Xian. "I really don't need it, thank you." "Okay." Some transactions in the market may involve some personal secrets. The elder of the Pu tribe did not say anything more and continued to walk forward with you and the others. When you and the others walked away, Xiao Xian said to the jade trader, "Let's go, but I think that place is good." Xiao Xian pointed to another place. "There are less people there. That place is also good." The man walked beside Xiao Xian, slightly half a step behind, under the loose animal skin clothes. His finger made a gesture. After leaving the market for some distance, Xiao Xian stopped. In front of him, on his left and right, there was a person, and behind him was the jade trader in the market. Xiao Xian turned to look at the jade trader. The trader was smiling at first, but now he was smiling too. However, there was less friendliness in his smile and more ruthlessness. There were no more jade stones in his loose animal skin coat. 4 people encircled Xiao Xian in the middle, and the encirclement gradually narrowed. "Kid, hand over the things," the man in front said. Xiao Xian did not say anything, nor did he show any panic. "Don't hide it, we know exactly what you have on you. But you have guts with such precious things, you dare to come with me alone." The jade trader's eyes flashed with a greedy light. Precious things? Xiao Xian thought for a moment. He had many precious things on him, such as the insect skin clothes, those special silk threads, the drumming tribe's water moonstones, and the fire crystals. Xiao Xian's eyes flashed. He remembered what the man in the cave said. "You have guts. When you go out, don't go alone." Chapter 185. A wasp the size of a thumb was circling around one of them. Xiao Xian had heard from some people in the team that there were some people who specialized in finding treasures. They would raise some animals that could find treasures. Those animals were very sensitive to objects with special energy, such as the fire crystal. With the help of these animals, the success rate of the treasure hunters would be greatly increased. Now, the strange-looking bee that was flying around one of them should be the so-called treasure-hunting bee. "What do you want?" Xiao Xian asked. "Don't pretend. I know you have the fire crystal. Or, if you can give us more things, we can let you go, otherwise," the man in front of Xiao Xian said fiercely. Sure enough, Xiao Xian thought. So, the man in the cave could also sense the fire crystal? After waiting for a while, they saw that Xiao Xian didn't speak. One of them became impatient and his face darkened. "Don't talk to him anymore. Since he doesn't want to give it to us, we'll kill him and search his body." For them, Xiao Xian was just a newcomer who came with the team for the first time. He was a young man who didn't know anything and didn't have much strength. Every time they made a move, they would make some inquiries. Before this, after the treasure hunting bee found the fire crystal, they pretended to be traders in the market and talked with the traveler team. They knew that this guy named Xiao Xian was alone and didn't belong to any of the tribes in the traveler team. They had never heard of the Yanjiao tribe. It was probably a small tribe in a remote place. They didn't need to care about it. It didn't matter if they killed people from such a small tribe. They had even plotted against people from some tribes in the central region, let alone a young man from an unknown tribe. As long as they were not from the Mang tribe, 8 Limbs tribe or other powerful tribes, when it was time to attack, they would attack mercilessly. There were no other people walking around. The 4 of them surrounded Xiao Xian. One of them had a ferocious smile on his face. The muscles on his face and other parts of his body that were not covered by clothes were squirming and bulging strangely. Although they did not inflate like the people of the drumming tribe, they still gave off a very strong feeling. At the same time, some lines appeared on his body. This was a totem warrior with rich experience in robbing. He had a strong murderous aura. Many people who came to the market to trade had been killed by him. His bulging muscles and the obvious totem patterns on his body made him look even more ferocious. He opened his mouth and roared at Xiao Xian. That roar sounded like several wild beasts roaring at the same time. It was an obvious threat. If it was in the past, those people who were stopped by them would have already lost their heads out of fear. Their faces would be filled with fear, and they would even promise to take out even more treasures in exchange for their lives. Of course, in the end, they took the treasures and their lives. Chu Su stood quietly behind a few short trees about 100 meters away, looking at the 5 people over there. He came here with the cyan bird, but he did not expect to see such a scene. TSK, I kindly reminded him, but he still came out alone. So, this person is stupid. He deserves to lose his life. Chu Su whispered. Beside him, the woman in white stood there, holding a furry spider in her arms. She frowned slightly and looked at the 5 people over there. She was not interested in the affairs of those small tribes. The reason why she followed Chu Su here was to see if they had anything to do with the people who pulled the spider silk. They are the thieves? The woman in white asked. Yes, it's them. But I didn't know that they would do this kind of thing. Well, they have the guts to steal from the Mang tribe and 8 Limbs tribe. Naturally, they would steal from others. Chu Su said. Aren't you going to help? Why should I help? When the matter over there is finished, I will deal with them. Whether it was Chu Su or the woman in white, for them, people from small tribes did not need their attention. For example, in Chu Su and the woman's eyes, they were civilized people with more technology and rich culture, who thought they were smarter and more powerful, while those from small tribes were stupid and short-sighted barbarians who knew nothing but killing and robbing. The two sides were not at the same level at all. Usually, they did not even bother to say a word to those people. It was rare that he specially reminded them in the cave, but they did not take it seriously. Chu Su was not in the mood to intervene. Looking at the situation over there, the difference in strength between the two sides was too big. It should be over soon. As for whether the surrounded boy was dead or alive, it had nothing to do with him. He was not from his tribe. He could only say that the boy was unlucky and too stupid. After the matter is over, should I do it or you do it? Chu Su asked the person next to him. The woman in white touched the spider in her arms and said casually, half each. Okay. While Chu Su and the woman in white were discussing how to torture and interrogate the thief, Xiao Xian was standing calmly on the other side of the field, looking at the one who had already used his totem power. You want the fire crystal? Well, if you have the ability, come and get it, Xiao Xian said. Seeing Xiao Xian's reaction, the 4 of them were puzzled, but more than that, they felt that this was a reckless brat who didn't know the difference between life and death. He was so slow and stupid. A roar like that of a lion or tiger came out of the totem warrior's mouth. His originally swollen and taut legs wriggled at this moment and became thicker again. Every muscle was full of strength, and it looked as if it could kick an elephant to death. After a loud roar, he rushed towards Xiao Xian. Every step he took covered several meters. Almost in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Xiao Xian. At this moment, the totem power in Xiao Xian's body rose to the extreme in an instant. On the totem in his mind, the flame suddenly surged fiercely, like adding fuel to firewood. His exposed arm was not as swollen as the opponent's, but the blue veins under his skin intertwined and jumped like dragons. Xiao Xian looked straight at the man who was rushing towards him. This was the first time he saw him, but he had a strong killing intent. The fighting intent in his eyes also spread. If everyone has forgotten the Yanjiao tribe, then let them remember it again, Xiao Xian agreed with the shaman's words. Since they did not remember and did not know each other, then it was better to remind them forcefully. They didn't see any big movements from Xiao Xian, who was standing there. He just turned his body slightly, then stretched out his hand and waved his fist in a very simple way. The man who rushed towards Xiao Xian missed. Before he could make another attack, he felt an extremely strong aura explode beside him. This aura was too strong and too fast. It almost reached its peak in a short time, causing his scalp to tingle and his body to slow down. In the next moment, he was punched in the chest. His muscles, which looked very strong and tough, were like fragile fruit skin under the attack of this seemingly ordinary fist. They caved in directly. Visible ripples spread from the point of impact. The sound of bones breaking rang out from the caved-in chest. The expression of the man who originally had a murderous look was now frozen. With this heavy punch, his body seemed to curl up slightly as if he had been frightened. His back, which corresponded to his chest, bulged, making him look like a hunchback. A large amount of blood spurted from his mouth. His whole body flew out directly, then fell heavily on the ground 20 meters away and stopped moving. A gust of wind blew by. The fallen leaves in the forest not far away were blown over by the wind. The sound of the leaves rubbing against the ground could be heard clearly at this moment. The surrounding atmosphere seemed to have frozen. For a moment, no one said a word. Chu Su and the woman in white, who were standing behind the bush, looked over with wide eyes. Their eyelids twitched, as if they could not believe what they were seeing. Just a moment ago, Chu Su was still discussing with the people beside him how to torture and interrogate the thief later. He did not care about the situation over there at all. Moreover, they had already sentenced Xiao Xian to death and expected the whole process to be completed in a very short time. Now it was over there very quickly. However, the killer and the victim were directly reversed. How could the people who could steal, rob, and kill in this place be easy to deal with? However, that ferocious-looking strong man was killed by that harmless-looking boy with one punch. Chu Su himself was not sure if he could do that. Not only Chu Su, but even the woman in white, who had always been dismissive of those unknown small tribes, was also stunned at this moment. She did not even know that she was plucking the white hair of her beloved pet white-haired spider. Her eyes were fixed on that figure over there. Chu Su, are you sure that he is just a person from a small tribe? The woman in white asked. Which person from a small tribe could have such power at such a young age? Moreover, the other party's control of the totemic power was extremely precise. In a very short period of time, it had soared from nothing to the peak. Although they were still some distance away, she could clearly feel the huge change in that instant. It was as if a ferocious beast had suddenly appeared there and disappeared in the next moment. There was no buffer time. Everything was completed in that short moment. If the other party was really from a small tribe, then that young man should be called a monster in their tribe. Not hearing Chu Su's answer, the woman in white asked again, "That person, which tribe is he from?" Chu Su swallowed his saliva. "I don't know. He just ran to the cave where the travelers rested to avoid trouble. People with a bit of eyesight would not provoke him. During the time when he was sleeping, the people in the cave had changed two groups. He really did not know which group was from which tribe, and he did not want to know at that time. Usually, he ignored the travelers and the people from small tribes. Who knew that he would see such a thing today? The woman in white looked at Chu Su expressionlessly. Idiot! Chapter 186. While Chu Su and the woman in white were guessing which tribe Xiao Xian came from, the other three people, who had been completely stunned by the turn of events, finally came to their senses. They had just witnessed with their own eyes how their companion had been killed by this seemingly harmless kid in front of them with one punch. One punch! Without using a knife, without using any other tools or tricks, it was just a simple punch. This kid, who they had regarded as prey, had used only one punch to kill the person who had always been at the front of their group. Their plan had gone awry. They had completely misjudged this person who looked too young. None of them had expected that this kid, who was too young, would be so violent, straightforward, and terrifying. It was as if he was demonstrating his strength to someone. At this moment, in the eyes of these three people, Xiao Xian was no longer a naive young man who had just joined the team for the first time, but a predator who was like a ferocious beast. They were bold, but not fearless of death. The three people who had finally reacted roared like monsters, and the totem patterns on their bodies were also revealed. Almost at the same time, the three figures were like high-speed beasts, running in three different directions at the same time, intending to leave this place as quickly as possible. It's too late to run now. The totem power in Xiao Xian's body rose to the peak again, and the fighting spirit in his eyes rose again, even stronger than before. He fixed his gaze on one of them and chased after him, not looking at the other two. The slightly loose animal skin coat produced a rustling sound as Xiao Xian's body moved quickly with the speed of his body. The explosive power from the instant increase also increased his speed to a level faster than the other three. Like a strong gust of wind, he caught up with the person he had targeted. Without waiting for the other person to react, Xiao Xian stretched out his hands, and his arm, which was not as thick as the other person's, was already in front of the other person. The fist that he had just used to hit the other person was swung out again. The other person wanted to block with his arm, but found that the moment his arm came into contact with the other person's fist, it bent and slammed into his chest. Bang! The second person, like the previous one, was almost killed with one blow. It was the same kind of violent method. After killing two enemies in a row, Xiao Xian did not stop. When he chased after the third person, he kicked a small stone out of the ground. The stone that was kicked away shot towards the third person like a bullet. Poochie! His thigh was hit by the stone, but it didn't penetrate, which showed how strong his body was. That person only paused for a moment, ignoring the pain in his leg, and continued to flee. He regretted choosing such a prey. In the end, the prey became the hunter, and the four of them stepped into the hunter's trap. He now understood that the other party had seen through his intentions from the start. Perhaps the other party had already sensed their presence before he had pretended to be a traitor with the jade stones. He was just pretending not to know. Otherwise, why would he let the other members of the traveling party leave first instead of waiting nearby? That's right, because he was confident that he could take care of the four of them. That kid chose such a secluded place. The four of them pitifully thought that the other party was an idiot. He knew that Xiao Xian was fast, but he still underestimated Xiao Xian. Just as that person was about to run out of the forest, a leg that was not as thick as his swept towards him, bringing with it a whooshing sound, like those ferocious beasts pouncing on their prey in the forest. Bang! The person who was swept by that leg flew back over 10 meters and fell to the ground. Don't kill me. I have a lot of treasures, jade stones from the Mang tribe, and silk clothes from the Eight Limbs tribe. I just hope that you can spare my life. I can take you to find hidden jade stones. There are a lot, really, a lot. The person who brought Xiao Xian here was now lying on the ground. Because of the blood he spat out, his mouth was still red, and it was difficult for him to speak. He struggled for a while, but as if he had lost all his strength, he fell back again. He looked in the direction that his last companion had fled. That person seemed to have escaped successfully. Xiao Xian glanced at him, then turned and walked in the direction that the fourth person had fled. Just as Xiao Xian turned around, the person who was lying on the ground quietly got up, took out a slender bone knife from his waist, and stabbed towards Xiao Xian. However, Xiao Xian dodged it as if he had eyes on the back of his head. That person only felt his arms go numb, and the bone knife in his hand fell away. Puff! The slender bone knife pierced through his body. That person made a meaningless sound from his throat, looked at Xiao Xian in disbelief, and then knelt on the ground. Xiao Xian looked at the person in front of him, lifted his foot and stomped down. Bang! The ground under Xiao Xian's feet, with his feet as the center, suddenly caved in, forming a circle with a diameter of nearly 2 meters and a depth of a palm. Chu Su and the woman in white, who were standing behind the bushes, felt as if their hearts had been violently shaken, just like the ground. The white-haired spider nestled in the woman in white's arms had all its hair standing on end, and it was trembling. The little green bird that had brought Chu Su here also stood on the leaf closest to Chu Su, nervously looking in a direction in the air. On the other side, after Xiao Xian stomped his foot, he no longer paid attention to the person kneeling on the ground. He turned and walked in the direction of the fourth person. His footsteps were slow, as if he was not in a hurry to catch up. Behind Xiao Xian, the person kneeling on the ground had bloody lines spreading, and it looked as if his body had been split open. Such a violent and forceful method made Chu Su feel that he had been blind before. How could he have thought that this young man was an idiot who did not know anything? In fact, he was the idiot, right? He did not even recognize such a powerful person. However, there were 4 people who had surrounded him before. Now that the boy had killed 3 of them, it was obvious that he could not catch up with the 4th one, so he was walking so slowly. Just as he thought about it, Chu Su saw the little green bird hiding in his arms. What's wrong? Chu Su was puzzled. The little green bird hiding in his arms looked up at a certain place in the sky, as if it was very afraid. The sky? Chu Su raised his head and looked over. Then, he saw a huge eagle carrying a person and flying towards the young man. Bang! The man held by the eagle was thrown to the ground. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive, but his bones seemed to be a little twisted. He should be dead, right? The 4 people were all killed in such a short time. In this place, strength spoke louder than words. However, not everyone would reveal their strength to the outside world. Who on earth was that boy? Which tribe did he come from? Chu Su and the woman in white both thought that they should go back and ask people to investigate carefully. Chapter 187. Not much time had passed since the man who pretended to be a traitor brought Xiao Xian over to kill all 4 of them. Xiao Xian tied up the 4 dead men with straw rope. There was no one else around for the time being, but there was no guarantee that someone would come over after hearing the commotion. These 4 men probably had accomplices, so Xiao Xian didn't plan to stay here for long. While Xiao Xian was tying up the men, Cha-Cha was looking left and right with nothing to do. It glanced at the bushes a few times, and then looked at an injured, strange-looking bee that was spinning on the ground. It was the treasure-hunting bee that had been tamed by those people. However, when its master was killed by Xiao Xian, it was also affected. It was injured by the turbulent airflow and fell to the ground, unable to fly. No matter how hard it flapped its wings, it could only make a buzzing sound as it spun on the ground. Cha-Cha stared at the treasure-hunting bee for a few seconds, then pecked and ate it. "All right, let's go, Cha-Cha. Let's find a place to get rid of these people first," Xiao Xian said as he jumped onto Cha-Cha's back. Cha-Cha flapped its wings and lifted up the 4 tied-up men with its big claws. Although they were a little heavy, as long as it wasn't a long-distance flight, it wasn't a big problem for Cha-Cha. Before leaving, Xiao Xian glanced at the bushes before retracting his gaze. He knew there were people behind him. The young man he saw in the cave was also there. Because of this, when he dealt with the 4 men just now, he used such barbaric and violent methods. He used the same style that Mai and the others used to hunt fearsome beasts. For example, Mai used his fists to beat up the 4-fanged wild boar. Most Yanjiao tribes had the same style and advocated strength. Since it was to intimidate, Xiao Xian naturally used the most Yanjiao style. In order to achieve the best effect, he didn't even use a stone knife, only his fist. This should be able to leave an impression on the people there, right? After Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha left, Chu Su and the other 2 came out from behind the bush and walked to the place where the battle had taken place to take a closer look. Very strong power. It could even be considered barbaric and overbearing, but this was not the style of the few tribes that Chu Su knew. There were also some who were used to using absolute power to attack their opponents, but they might not be able to do so. Moreover, the opponent was so young. On the other side, Xiao Xian and Cha-Cha brought the corpses of the 4 robbers to a forest that did not belong to the Mang tribe or the 8 Limbs tribe. They threw the 4 people there. There were many traces of wild beasts around. They believed that these 4 people would disappear soon. Xiao Xian found all of their belongings. Among them, there were some jade stones and a few good animal skins. After cleaning up the bloodstains on his body and putting the jade stones and animal skins into the animal skin bag, Xiao Xian adjusted himself, dispelling the murderous aura and calming down his negative emotions. It was like every time he returned to the tribe after a hunt to wash his sword. After a short while, when Xiao Xian opened his eyes again, he was no different from his usual self. He still looked like a young and inexperienced boy, and no one could tell that he had killed 4 people not long ago. Patting Cha-Cha's head, Xiao Xian said, "Let's go back." The people of the Pu and Pu tribe walked around the market. The things they wanted to trade were also exchanged. When they were almost done, they saw Xiao Xian running towards them. They looked at Xiao Xian from head to toe and didn't see any injuries on him. Only then did they feel relieved. "How is it?" Xiao Xian took out a jade stone the size of an egg and tossed it up and down. "Done." "Hey, let me see. How much better is the jade stone of the Mang forest compared to the water moon stone of the drumming tribe?" you asked. Xiao Xian handed over the jade stone. This was only one of the jade stones he found from the 4 people. It contained less energy, but it was very peaceful. When the time came, Xiao Xian and the others returned to the cave, and another group of people went out. However, the people who went out were not familiar with Xiao Xian. Therefore, when Chu Su asked people to inquire about Xiao Xian, they did not get any useful information. 2 days later, the group of travelers began to prepare to leave. This was the last day that they could hang around the market. If they wanted to trade, they had to hurry up. After this market, they would probably have to wait until next year before they could come again. Xiao Xian came to an old wine cellar. He exchanged for a bamboo bottle of wine and tasted it. The alcohol content of the wine was not high. It was very light and had a refreshing taste with medicinal properties. Because it was stored in a bamboo bottle, it emitted a bamboo fragrance. However, it still couldn't compare to the juice of the plants on the other side of the river. When Xiao Xian drank, he also talked with the old man. In his previous life, he used the grapes in his yard to make wine. The old man was from the Mang tribe. He also had a piece of jade on him, but the texture and pattern of the jade was not as exquisite as Chu Su's. It was also not as big as Chu Su's jade. He didn't have a high status in the Mang tribe, but in the market, some people who liked to blackmail and rob didn't dare to have any ideas about him. The old man was a little arrogant, but when he talked with Xiao Xian about making wine, he became very enthusiastic. This was a person who was very enthusiastic about making wine. When talking about his favorite things, he didn't have the same attitude as before. He asked Xiao Xian to sit there and took out several kinds of grain wine for Xiao Xian to drink. When Xiao Xian talked with the old man, he also figured out the function of the pottery tools. If the soil in the Yanjiao tribe wasn't suitable for pottery, they wouldn't have used stone for everything. While they were talking, a person came to the old man's booth. "Hey you!" The old man was annoyed when he was interrupted while talking with Xiao Xian. He was about to scold the person, but when he looked up, he saw a piece of jade hanging on the person in front of the booth. He swallowed his scolding and put on a smile. However, the person in front of the booth didn't pay attention to the old man. He said to Xiao Xian, "Hey, come here. I have something to tell you." Xiao Xian ignored him and continued to drink the wine in the bamboo tube. Seeing Xiao Xian's attitude, Chu Su wanted to scold him, but after thinking for a while, he walked over. When he saw the old man next to him, he waved his hand. The old man smiled and stepped back a few steps to stay away from them. After the old man left, Chu Su lowered his voice and said to Xiao Xian, Are you interested in seeing what happened to the people who robbed you that day? Xiao Xian thought for a while and stood up from the ground. Where? Xiao Xian wasn't interested in those robbers. What he wanted to see was how the people of the Mang tribe dealt with those people. How strong were the people of the Mang tribe? After talking to you and the others, Xiao Xian left with Chu Su and went to a mountain a little further away from the market. That place didn't belong to the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe. In front of a wooden house on the mountain, a dozen people were gathered. The leader was a tall and strong man with a face full of curly hair. He took a few gulps of water from a clay pot, then swung his hand and smashed the pot on the ground. Bang! The clay pot was smashed into pieces in an instant. Haven't you found them yet? The curly-bearded man asked. His eyes were as sharp as knives as he glanced at the people around him. The person closest to the curly-bearded man trembled and said carefully, "Not yet. Even the treasure-hunting bee didn't come back?" The curly-bearded man's tone was very dangerous. He seemed to be suppressing his anger. The treasure-hunting bee that he had trained with great difficulty was taken away by those four good-for-nothings. They said they found the fire crystals, but what happened? They didn't find any fire crystals. The four of them disappeared together with the treasure-hunting bee. They were probably all killed by the killers. When he sent people to look for them, they only found blood in one place. If those four people didn't come back, they probably wouldn't be able to. Big Brother, could it be that the people of the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe found something? A person said with fear. Could it be that they know we stole it? Another person said worriedly. In that case, we have to move. Someone suggested, if we wait for them to find us, we won't have much chance to escape. Listening to his subordinate's words, the curly-bearded man became angrier and angrier. His eyes turned red and he punched the stone table in front of him. The air rippled and the stone table was broken into small pieces in the blink of an eye. Stone powder flew everywhere. Behave yourselves today. Don't be targeted. After a pause, the curly-bearded man took a deep breath. Pack your things. We'll leave tomorrow. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a whooshing sound coming from all directions. Thin and hard bamboo thorns shot at the people gathered there like rain. Those who reacted fast had already started to resist with the tools in their hand. Those who reacted slowly were directly shot into hedgehogs. However, even if they were shot like this, they didn't die. They still had consciousness, but they couldn't move. If they moved their muscles slightly, they would feel pain all over their body. And every time they moved, their blood would flow out along those bamboo thorns. Such thin and hard bamboo thorns could only be made by those special bamboos in the Mang forest. People of the Mang tribe. At this moment, without the curly-bearded man's words, the people around scattered and rushed in all directions, hoping that the encirclement there would be weaker and give them a chance to escape. However, before they could run far, they were all tied up by the thin thread. Before they could struggle, they were knocked out or killed directly. Those who wanted to rush out of the encirclement with speed were cut into pieces by the thin threads when they passed between two big trees. Xiao Xian could still hear the sound of the strings breaking. The threads cut through the people, but they also broke because of the fast and strong impact. Not only the Mang tribe, even the people of the Eight Limbs tribe came. A sense of despair rose in the hearts of everyone who was surrounded. But they didn't understand why the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe would unite to treat them so seriously. They had only stolen a few pieces of jade that were not of good quality, and they had only taken 2 strands of spider silk. Could it be that because of this, they had incurred the wrath of these 2 large tribes? When the curly-bearded man was escaping, he was also tied up by some thin threads. He roared, and the muscles covered by the black totem patterns on his body suddenly jumped, as if they were ready to attack. Another roar, like a volcano that had been accumulating power for a long time, suddenly erupted. The dense sound of the strings breaking sounded, and he actually broke free from these thin threads. Although there were some cuts on his body, it didn't affect him much. However, just when he broke free from the threads, he heard the slight sound of the wind being cut diagonally behind him. The curly-bearded man instinctively felt the danger, especially at his neck. He suddenly felt a chill. This sudden change shocked him. Obviously, the people who found them this time were not simple people from the Mang tribe. They wanted to completely encircle and annihilate them, and even kill them. They didn't mean to show mercy at all. A sharp bamboo knife that was 2 fingers wide and half an arm long appeared at the side of the curly-bearded man's neck. The bamboo knife appeared very fast, and the distance between the knife and the neck was also very short, as if it could cut this person's neck in the next moment, but it also gave people an illusion that there was plenty of time to escape. However, an illusion was an illusion after all. Puff, blood splashed out. The curly-bearded man still maintained the expression of disbelief, like a rusty machine, and looked to the side sluggishly. There stood a person. The curly-bearded man opened his eyes wide, and carefully looked at the piece of jade hanging from the person's waist. That was a piece of jade with a slight green color. Why would such a person deal with his own group in person? Although this group of people had killed many people and cheated a few people from the Mang tribe and the 8 Limbs tribe, for the sake of caution after coming here, they absolutely didn't kill the people from these 2 tribes. However, today, the Mang tribe sent such a person to encircle and annihilate them in person. Generally speaking, such people shouldn't have put them in their eyes. With their arrogance, why would they need to do this? Until death, the curly-bearded man still couldn't figure out why he provoked the person wearing the jade. Bang! The curly-bearded man fell to the ground. The person wearing the jade shook off the few bloodstains on the bamboo knife, and didn't care about the remaining bloodstains on the bamboo knife, and looked around. Those who were encircled were either dead or dizzy. Not only the dead curly-bearded man, but also Xiao Xian, who stood not far away and looked over there, didn't understand. The strength gap was too big. If they were in the Yanjiao tribe, only people like Tuo and Kiki could solve it. "Uncle Huang Yi, how is it?" Chu Su asked. The person holding the bamboo knife and wearing the jade shook his head. "It's not them." "It's not them?" Chu Su was confused. "If it's not them, who else can it be? They are the only ones who have entered the forest. Several of my bamboo rats have been eaten by them." "They don't have that ability yet," Huang Yi said. Because he was sure that it wasn't them, he didn't show any mercy and directly killed the people here instead of taking them back for interrogation. Then who else could it be? Chu Su thought, glancing at Xiao Xian next to him, and denied it in his heart. "No, it's not this guy. Although this guy is strong, he can't sneak into the depths of the forest quietly to steal a few good pieces of jade." This matter had infuriated the leader so much that he had flipped out. Could it be? Chu Su suddenly thought of a name. Huang Yi sighed in a low voice. "It may be a thief." Chu Su was a little frustrated. If it was a thief, it would not be so easy to catch him. "Pack up and go back," Huang Yi called the others. Chapter 188. After saying a few words to the leader of the 8 Limbs tribe, Huang Yi turned his head and intended to say something to Chu Su. However, his sight fell on Xiao Xian, who was standing beside Chu Su, especially on Xiao Xian's animal skin clothes. His sight stayed on Xiao Xian for 2 more seconds, and he frowned discontentedly, thinking, how could Chu Su know people from such a small tribe? Thinking of this, Huang Yi glanced at Xiao Xian again. Except for his clothes, which were very small tribe style, he didn't see anything special about Xiao Xian. Seeing that Xiao Xian was still staring at the clothes of the totem warriors of the Mang tribe and the 8 Limbs tribe, Huang Yi was more sure that this was an ignorant person. Without giving Xiao Xian more sight, Huang Yi looked around and found nothing useful, so he left with his people. And the people of the Eight Limbs tribe didn't give Xiao Xian more than a glance, and they packed up and planned to leave. "Little Sue, let's go," the people of the Eight Limbs tribe said to the woman in white who was holding the white-haired spider. "You go first, I have something else to do." "Okay, then we'll go back first." After the people of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe left, there were only 3 people left: Xiao Xian, Chu Su and Su of the Eight Limbs tribe. Chu Su winked at Su, asking her to test Xiao Xian. Unfortunately, Su didn't move. She just stood there holding the spider with long white hair, quietly observing Xiao Xian's behavior. Seeing that Su didn't cooperate, Chu Su glared at her. Today, he took Xiao Xian here to let Xiao Xian see the powerful strength of the Mang tribe, especially today. The leader of the Mang tribe was a senior totem warrior. It was rare for a senior totem warrior of the Mang tribe to lead a team to encircle and suppress. For people of small tribes, they would be shocked once they saw it. But obviously, this guy didn't seem to have much reaction. Except for glancing at the clothes of the warriors of the 2 tribes, he didn't show any other expression. Was he shocked or not? Chu Su was not sure. Just as Chu Su was about to find a topic to test Xiao Xian, he saw Xiao Xian walk away. "Sai, we can't go there. There's a trap set by 8 of Limbs." Before Chu Su could finish his words, he saw that Xiao Xian had already walked into the area. He thought to himself, "You won't listen to my advice again. You'll suffer later." However, after waiting for a while, there was still no movement from the other side. Chu Su was confused. He looked at Su, who was standing next to him, and nodded in the direction of Xiao Xian with his chin. He asked, "Didn't you set any traps over there?" Su was also puzzled. She remembered that some of the traps set by the people of the tribe were activated when they encircled and annihilated those people, but there were still some that were not removed. They were all traps that were not lethal but could trap people. This was the style of the Eight Limbs tribe. The purpose was to warn some people who came here and let them remember the Eight Limbs tribe deeply and be deeply afraid of them. However, that guy had walked so far, but not a single trap was activated. Su, who was getting more and more confused, didn't notice that she had already plucked a handful of hair from the spider in her arms. Seeing Su like that, Chu Su didn't expect her to give a proper answer. He saw Xiao Xian strolling in the woods, and guessed that when the people of the Eight Limbs tribe evacuated just now, they probably removed all the trap. Seeing Chu Su walk over there, Su opened her mouth, but said nothing in the end. "Sai, you're Xiao Xian, right? Which tribe are you from?" Chu Su walked over. Before he took 2 steps into the woods, one of his feet was tied and hung upside down on a tree, swaying. Chu Su took out his knife and cut off the thin wire that tied his feet. He landed on the ground, shook off the leaves on his body, and turned back to glare at Su, who was standing there silently. After a while, he looked at Xiao Xian, who was standing in the woods. The traps were not removed. How could that guy be safe and sound? Luck? No, he couldn't be so lucky. According to the style of the Eight Limbs tribe, since they didn't remove all the traps, there must be a lot of hidden wires and snares waiting for the prey to come to their door. Even if there were only some small things left for the people of the Eight Limbs tribe, many people would still be trapped by those traps, just like Chu Su's own carelessness and got one of his feet tied just now. Chu Su didn't look down on Xiao Xian now. Who on earth was this guy, who could kill 4 totem warriors so quickly and stroll in the traps of the Eight Limbs tribe? He had never seen the totem patterns on Xiao Xian's body when he was fighting. This time, Chu Su didn't continue to walk inside. He just waited at the edge of the woods, watching Xiao Xian stroll in there. Xiao Xian was very interested in the traps of the Eight Limbs tribe. Although there were only some ordinary traps left, and the more technical ones were removed, Xiao Xian could still see some of the key points and preferences of the people of the Eight Limbs tribe from those simple traps. Moreover, the wires used by the people of the Eight Limbs tribe should be spider silk, right? There were many kinds of spider silk. Although many of the traps had been removed, there were still many subtle traces left on the branches and leaves, which could be seen from those traces. When Xiao Xian walked out of the woods again, Chu Su showed a smile that he thought was friendly. He pointed at himself and said to Xiao Xian, "Mang Forest, Chu Su." The people of the Mang tribe liked to call themselves Mang Forest XX. The Mang Forest referred to the wide woods of the Mang tribe. It was said that there were countless treasures in the Mang Forest, and the people who were born in the Mang Forest were also gifted. Their totem warriors of the same level were much stronger than those of other tribes. Of course, this was just what Xiao Xian heard from the travelers of the Pu tribe. These rumors might have embellished the facts, so it shouldn't be so exaggerated. The warriors of the Yanjiao tribe were also stronger than some of the people of the Pu tribe and the drumming tribe. This was what Xiao Xian personally experienced. Anyway, since the people of the Mang tribe introduced him so formally, Xiao Xian naturally replied formally. Putting several leaves picked from the woods into the animal skin bag, Xiao Xian looked at Chu Su and answered, "Yanjiao, Xiao Xian." "Yanjiao? Why does it sound so familiar?" Chu Su recalled. Not only Chu Su, but Su, who was standing next to him with the white spider in her arms, also felt familiar. Xiao Xian looked up at the sky and said, "It's getting dark. I'll go back first." "Oh, okay." Chu Su, who was wondering why the word Yanjiao sounded so familiar, didn't say much. After Xiao Xian left, he still stood there thinking. "Hey, Su, have you heard of the Yanjiao tribe before?" Chu Su asked. "I think I have, but it's been too long. I can't remember." Su touched the spider in her hand, thinking about when she had heard of this tribe. The two were silent, trying hard to recall when they had heard of this tribe. "I remember." Chu Su jumped up in surprise and then said to himself, "How could it be? How could it be? What do you remember?" Su asked. Which? That tribe with strong limbs but no intelligence, violent, barbaric and unreasonable. Didn't you hear the story of Yanjiao when you were a child? Hearing Chu Su's words, Su was shocked. Didn't they say that the Yanjiao tribe was destroyed? Whether it was the Mang tribe or the Eight Limbs tribe, many children in the tribes were taught when they were very young. Those teachers would tell them some stories, some of which were true, some of which were embellished and blurred, and the story of the Yanjiao tribe was one of them. It was said that the Yanjiao tribe was one of the famous tribes in the central region at that time, which was at the same level as the Mang tribe, the Eight Limbs tribe and the Thousand Masks tribe. However, the tribe was very barbaric. The shamans in the tribe didn't know anything, and the leader was headstrong. The people in the tribe were all ignorant, arrogant and willful, except for their great strength. Finally, one day, the natural disaster came, and the shamans and the leader in the tribe listened to slanderous words. As a result, the tribe was divided and went on different paths. Later, the tribe was destroyed. Since then, there was one less strong person in the central region. Chu Su and Su were not the only two people who were indoctrinated in this way. Before this, they also thought so. But now, what was the matter with the person who called himself Xiao Xian of the Flaming Horns? When that guy killed people, the totem patterns were very clear, and it didn't look like the destruction of the tribe at all. And his strength was at least at the level of intermediate totem warrior, not inferior to Chu Su, who had just entered the intermediate level. That barbaric and tough style was indeed what they had heard, but ignorant. Not necessarily. That brat had tricked all four of his robbers. The story, which was used as a negative example by the two tribes, seemed to be not what they thought. However, when they were young, when the teachers told the story of Yanjiao, they also sighed with emotion that if the Yanjiao tribe was still there, the situation in the central region would not be like it was now. Thinking of this, Chu Su didn't say more to Su. He had to go back quickly and tell everyone about it. By the way, he asked what the real Yanjiao tribe was like. Not to mention how smart they were, their strength was there, which could not be ignored. If Yanjiao was really still there, if Yanjiao came back, what should they do? After Chu Su left in a hurry, Su also hurried back to the tribe to tell others. Several senior leaders of the Mang tribe were still worried about whether there were robbers in the forest. When they were discussing, Chu Su ran over and told them about Xiao Xian. Just now they were dissatisfied with Chu Su's recklessness and wanted to scold him, but now their attention was diverted. Xiao Xian of Yanjiao? Is it really that tribe? It's impossible. Didn't they say that the Yanjiao tribe was extinct? People suddenly started to talk about it. Although they were talking about it, they didn't have a definite impression and position. They didn't know what kind of tribe the Yanjiao tribe was, so they were just surprised. The chief on the seat called Chu Su over and asked him in detail. Then, he asked everyone to leave first. He and the shaman went to a solemn stone house, where some things left behind by the ancestors of the Mang tribe were stored. When they came to the place where the scrolls were stored, they opened the lid of a big bamboo box. Inside, there were some scrolls made of special bamboo. At the bottom of the bamboo box, there were scrolls that had not been opened for hundreds of years. The shaman of the Mang tribe took out one of the scrolls in the corner of the bottom floor. Because it had been there for a long time, even the special bamboo and animal skin would inevitably change color, showing a sense of age. When he opened the scroll, what came into view was a picture of two horns wrapped in flames. The Yanjiao tribe, the next day, when the Mang tribe sent people to the cave to look for them, they found that the traveling team had left early in the morning. Chapter 189. The traveling team continued on their planned route. After leaving the area of the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, the traveling tribe traveled for another 6 days. They passed through some small markets or some medium-sized tribes in the central region and exchanged some things. Xiao Xian marked all the places they passed through on the map he drew, and even marked the characteristics of each tribe. Because they were in a hurry, they didn't exchange too many things. Xiao Xian only exchanged for some tribal symbols or small souvenirs, and hurried on with their journey. Of course, the traveling team also encountered some wild beasts and even ferocious beasts when they passed through some wild mountains and ridges. However, there were relatively fewer ferocious beasts, and most of them were wild beasts. The traveling team pointed to the map and told Xiao Xian that most of the ferocious beasts were in this direction on the map, and that direction was exactly where Xiao Xian planned to go to the old haunt of the Yanjiao tribe. It was said that there were very few human tribes living there. It was also a vast mountainous area where ferocious beasts often appeared, and there were all kinds of unimaginable dangers. It was a place that no traveling team was willing to go to. Xiao Xian wanted to go there and have a look. Since they were on a trip, they naturally had to go to the old haunt of the Yanjiao tribe to see what secrets were hidden in the old haunt of the Yanjiao ancestors, and what the root old he talked about was. Since they were not going the same way, Xiao Xian naturally had to separate from the traveling tribe. Are you really going to leave the team? It's very dangerous to be alone. You persuaded Xiao Xian after hearing that he was going to leave. It's rare for me to go out of the tribe, so I want to look around. When I'm done, I'll follow the route to find you, Xiao Xian said. Along the way, Xiao Xian had drawn part of the map of the central region according to what he knew. Although there were still many places that the traveling team hadn't been to, and the animal skin roll was still empty, Xiao Xian was not in a hurry, and could finish it slowly. After bidding farewell to the traveling team, Xiao Xian headed in the direction of the old Yanjiao tribe, that old he had mentioned. This time, he was alone. Sometimes, he would ask Cha-Cha to bring him along when they encountered places with complicated terrain. One day later, Xiao Xian looked at the map in his hand. According to the map, this area was the territory of the Lu tribe. Usually, when approaching the territory of a tribe, Xiao Xian would ask the Cha-Cha to be more careful. These tribes were very guarded. To get to the old haunt, they had to go around the Lu tribe. Cha-Cha, who was still in the air, let out a cry that indicated that there were people nearby. Xiao Xian also heard the commotion. Those people seemed to be deliberately restraining their auras, and did not speak loudly. They were all silent. They should be from the Lu tribe, but Xiao Xian didn't know why they were so careful. No matter what, Xiao Xian had to be more vigilant. Rustle, some sounds of branches and leaves rubbing against each other rang out. There were also the sounds of rapid approaching footsteps. It didn't seem to be made by humans. Xiao Xian jumped onto a tree, intending to take a look from above. Although the traveling team had told Xiao Xian that the Lu tribe was not a big threat, Xiao Xian still had to be cautious. If the other party's attitude was not good, he would directly ask the Cha-Cha in the air to come to his aid. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, the footsteps got closer and faster. Xiao Xian couldn't see the other party's face clearly, but from the movements of the branches, he could tell that it was a tall guy. As the footsteps got closer, Xiao Xian hid behind the dense branches and looked out through the gaps between the leaves. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. When the other party passed by the tree Xiao Xian was hiding in like the wind, he paused and then turned back. Xiao Xian held the hilt of his knife, wondering if the other party had discovered him. The surrounding trees were not tall, and the one Xiao Xian chose was more suitable for hiding. As he was thinking, Xiao Xian saw the branches below being pulled apart. He lowered his head and saw a big bird's head. The bird was holding a fruit in its beak. The fruit was from this tree. Obviously, this bird only found the fruit, not Xiao Xian. But it didn't expect that when it pulled the branch, it would see the person hiding inside. Just like that, a man and a bird met. Xiao Xian was hiding at least 5 meters above the ground, but this bird's head was less than a meter away from Xiao Xian. This showed how tall this bird was. With Guang's forest raccoons in front of him, Xiao Xian was wary of such a big bird. After the branches below were pulled apart, Xiao Xian held the stone knife and was about to slash at it. However, before Xiao Xian could do anything, the bird let out a shrill squawk. Ignoring the fruit crumbs in its mouth, it turned around and ran away with its big feet. Xiao Xian! What a waste of such a big bird! If it was Guang's forest raccoons that used its head like a hoe, it would probably peck at Xiao Xian, right? However, this bird was even more surprised than Xiao Xian. It was like a little white rabbit meeting a big bad wolf, running away in panic and fear. Xiao Xian pushed aside the branches and looked at the bird that ran away like the wind. It was the same as Guang's forest raccoons. Its upper limbs had degenerated and it could not fly. Moreover, its body looked fatter than Guang's forest raccoons. Its lower limbs were slightly thicker and very fleshy. Whoosh! The shadow in the sky swept down, caught the big bird that had not run far, and then flew up again. After Cha-Cha caught the big bird, a team of 7 people rushed out of the woods. They did not notice Xiao Xian at first. They just stared at the sky and shouted. One of them even threw the spear in his hand, but Cha-Cha flew too fast and curved, so the spear missed a lot. It's caught! Where did this eagle come from? I've never seen this eagle before. Several people shouted over there. Then, they noticed Xiao Xian standing next to them. Who are you? One of them asked suspiciously. I'm just passing by. Well, that's my eagle up there. Xiao Xian saw that although the other party looked unhappy, they did not intend to continue throwing spears. He whistled and made a gesture towards the sky. The travelers had said that the Lu tribe had a special status in the central region, and the people of the Lu tribe should be friendly with each other. Cha-Cha caught the struggling bird and circled in the sky before landing. The other party was worried that Cha-Cha would directly throw the big bird down from the sky. However, Cha-Cha only threw the big bird in front of Xiao Xian when it was close to the ground. Then, it quickly flew up. It did not like the people who threw spears at it. The big bird was put on the ground. There were some claw marks on its body, and it was a little frightened, so it did not recover for a while. After panting for a while, it planned to continue escaping. Unfortunately, the other party had already tied it up with straw rope. "Are you really just passing by?" the leader asked. This time, his attitude was a little better. "Yes. I was just resting here when that big bird ran over," Xiao Xian said. "I'm sorry. I thought that eagle was going to take away our bird." The leader laughed. He had an impression of every eagle that came to their tribe to steal food, but the one he saw just now was indeed very unfamiliar. Moreover, domesticated eagles were different from wild eagles. Just now, he saw that eagle had drawings on its claws. He did not see clearly, but he guessed that they were totem patterns. The Lu tribe generally did not want to make enemies with others. Therefore, even if they were not close to many tribes, they would not offend them either. This young man in front of him could raise such a big eagle, so his tribe should be relatively large. Lu tribe, Yanjiao. The man introduced himself. Yanjiao tribe, Xiao Xian. Yanjiao tribe? They looked at each other. It seemed that this was the first time they had heard of it. Was it very far from here? "Did you come here with the traveling team?" one of them asked. "Yes, I just parted with them." Sure enough, he came from a far place, they thought. Looking at the eagle in the sky, Yanjiao said to Xiao Xian, "Can you do us a favor?" "Yes, please." Yanjiao explained briefly. It turned out that every once in a while, the Lu tribe would transport some of their animals out to trade with people from other tribes. Then they would come back. However, there was an accident early in the morning. The fence was damaged, but it was not repaired in time. A big bird rushed out, and then many more birds ran away. The patrolmen intercepted some, but missed many. They sent out 5 teams to search in 5 directions. Until now, they had not found all the animals. "So, I want you to ask your eagle to help us find them," Yanjiao said. "Okay." This was not a difficult task. Xiao Xian called Cha-Cha down and said a few words, then let it fly away. The people who had been busy all morning finally had a chance to rest. 3 of them directly sat down on the ground, thinking that if the eagle could not find them later, they would have to continue. "Hey, it's coming!" One of them, who was staring at the sky, said excitedly. They had only seen eagles in the sky take away their livestock before. This was the first time that they had encountered an eagle helping to bring back their livestock. This was only the first one. After about 10 minutes, the second one was found. After the second one, Cha-Cha did not bring back any more big birds. "There should be no more birds around here. Let's go back and see if the others have found any," Yanjiao said. At the same time, in order to thank Xiao Xian, Yanjiao also invited Xiao Xian to join them. During the chat just now, Xiao Xian showed his interest in raising big birds. This was also something that the Lu tribe was very proud of. They liked to let people see the results of their breeding, so that they could trade with more people in the future. "Come with us. We have the largest breeding farm in the central region. Many tribes have traded with us." Yanjiao brought Xiao Xian into the tribe. When he talked about breeding, his tone was full of pride. Xiao Xian, however, looked at the scene in front of him in surprise. They stood on the hill and looked at the lower ground. There were hundreds of birds as big as the previous one. Although they looked similar in size to the forest raccoons, they were more docile and only ate vegetables. In Xiao Xian's eyes, they were simply lumps of meat. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.